They said she was worthless. A mistake. The weakest Omega ever born to the Bloodfang pack. Tonight, under the crimson glow of the blood moon, Vyra Duskhalo will be rejected by the most powerful alpha in the realm, publicly shattered before thousands who came to witness a sacred bonding, only to see her destroyed instead. But what breaks her won't kill her. It will unleash something the world has never seen. This is the story of a girl who was thrown away like trash and came back as a queen forged in ash and fury. If you're watching from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or anywhere in between, drop your city in the comments below. And if you want to see how this ends, hit that like button and stay until the final word. You won't believe what happens next. The bonfire roared. Flames licked 30 feet into the night sky, casting violent shadows across the clearing where 500 wolves had gathered. The air reeked of burning cedar and raw anticipation, thick enough to choke on. Every pack from the northern territories had sent representatives. Alphas stood in tight clusters, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with predatory interest. Betas lounged against trees, smirking, trading crude jokes. Omegas huddled at the edges, whispering behind their hands, their voices a constant hum of gossip and speculation. And at the center of it all, trembling so hard her teeth chattered, stood Vyra Duskhalo. She was small. Too small. 5'3" in a world where Omega females usually hit 5'7", 5'8" easy. Her frame was bird-like, delicate in a way that made other wolves uncomfortable. Fragile, like she might shatter if someone breathed on her too hard. Her hair, a dull ash brown, hung limp around her shoulders, unwashed and uncared for because no one had bothered to help her prepare properly. Her skin was pale, almost translucent in the firelight, showing every vein, every shiver, every sign of weakness. She wore the ceremonial white dress, thin cotton that did nothing against the biting cold, and her bare feet were already numb against the frozen ground. She couldn't stop shaking. "Steady," whispered Mara, one of the older Omegas who'd helped her dress earlier. Mara stood just outside the circle, close enough to be heard but far enough to avoid association. Smart. Self-preservation. "Just breathe, girl. It'll be over soon." Over soon. Vyra wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to run as fast as her useless legs could carry her, away from this place, away from these people, away from the nightmare her life had become. But she couldn't, because across from her, separated by 20 feet of scorched earth and ancient tradition, stood Kale Draven Thorn. The Alpha Supreme, 6'5" of raw, brutal power. Shoulders broad enough to block out the moon. Arms corded with muscle that looked carved from granite, each movement radiating controlled violence. His hair was black as a starless sky, pulled back tight in a warrior's knot, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face, all hard lines and cruel beauty. High cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. His eyes were wolf gold, bright and merciless, scanning her like she was an insect he'd found on his boot. He hadn't spoken to her yet, hadn't even acknowledged her, not once in 3 months. Vyra had known this was coming since the elders had announced the pairing back in July. The blood moon ceremony only happened once every decade, and when it did, the moon supposedly chose the matches. Fated mates. Destined pairs. Soul bonds written in the stars. The bond was supposed to be undeniable, sacred, eternal. Vyra had felt nothing. No pull, no recognition, no warm glow in her chest like the stories promised. Just the same hollow emptiness she'd felt her entire life. The same gnawing certainty that she didn't belong here, that she was broken in some fundamental way. And judging by the look on Kale Draven's face, cold, distant, utterly devoid of anything resembling warmth or interest, he felt even less. Elder Rothick stepped into the circle, his ceremonial robe swirling around him like smoke. He was ancient, easily over 90, his face a roadmap of scars and wrinkles, his eyes milky with cataracts. But his voice was still strong, like gravel grinding against stone, carrying across the clearing with the weight of authority. "We gather under the blood moon," he began, his words echoing in the sudden silence, "to witness the sacred union of fated mates. The bond has been written in starlight and shadow. What is joined here cannot be torn asunder by mortal hand or mortal will." Vyra's stomach twisted. Cannot be torn asunder. She risked a glance at Kale Draven, He was staring past her, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. His hands were fists at his sides, knuckles white. He looked like he was barely containing the urge to kill something, or someone. Kale Draven Thorn, Elder Rothic continued, turning toward the Alpha with a deep, reverent bow. Supreme Commander of the Northern Pax, Bloodborn of the First Line, Victor of the Scarlands Campaign, Keeper of the Ancient Wards. Do you accept this bond? Do you claim Vyra Duskalo as your mate, your equal, your destined partner in all things? Silence. The fire crackled and popped. Someone in the crowd coughed. A wolf howled in the distance, lonely and mournful. Kale Draven's eyes finally dropped to meet Vyra's. And what she saw there made her blood turn to ice. Disgust. Pure, unfiltered revulsion, like he'd just been asked to bond with a rotting corpse. No. The word was a gunshot in the silence. Vyra flinched like he'd struck her across the face. A ripple of shock tore through the crowd. Gasps, murmurs, someone laughed, sharp and mean, quickly stifled but not quickly enough. Elder Rothic's eyes widened, his wrinkled face going pale. Alpha Kyle Draven, the bond. The ritual has been performed. The match has been made by forces beyond our— There is no bond, Kale Draven said, his voice low and lethal, each word enunciated with crystalline clarity. He stepped forward, and every wolf in the clearing shrank back instinctively. His presence was suffocating, a tidal wave of dominance that made the air feel too thin, too hot despite the cold. Look at her. Vyra couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. Look at her. Kale Draven's lip curled in a sneer. She's half the size of a normal Omega, weak, sickly. She can barely stand without shaking like a leaf in a storm. Look at her arms, like twigs, her frame. One strong wind would snap her in half. Her skin, she looks half dead already. You expect me to believe the universe, in all its wisdom, paired me, with this? Each word was a blade stabbing into her chest, twisting. Vyra's vision blurred. Her chest felt like it was caving in, ribs cracking under an invisible weight. The pairing does not make mistakes, Elder Rothic said carefully, but there was doubt in his voice now. Hesitation, uncertainty creeping in at the edges. The ritual has been performed the same way for 1,000 years. Then maybe it's time to update the ritual. Kale Draven cut him off sharply. He turned his back on Vyra, addressing the crowd directly, his voice rising so everyone could hear. I am the Alpha Supreme. I command 6 packs across the northern territories. I lead armies. I defend our borders against rogues, against humans, against threats you can't even imagine. My mate needs to be strong, powerful, capable of standing beside me in battle, in strategy, in leadership. Someone worthy of this title of Luna Supreme. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then he gestured dismissively at Vyra, without even looking at her. This— His voice dripped with contempt. This is not a Luna. This is a charity case, a genetic failure that should have been culled from the bloodline generations ago. She can't fight, can't hunt, can't even shift properly from what I've heard. She faints at the sight of blood. She's never won a single challenge in her entire pathetic life. She contributes nothing to this pack, except taking up space and resources that could go to wolves who actually deserve them. Laughter erupted across the clearing, not just from 1 or 2 wolves, from dozens. Oh gods, look at her face! Did she really think she had a chance? Poor deluded thing. I heard she can't shift at all, actually. Defective Omega? Complete waste. The voices blended together into a roar of mockery and derision that crashed over Vyra like a physical force. Her knees buckled. She caught herself, barely, her hands hitting the cold ground. Her palms scraped against frozen dirt and gravel. Her wolf was screaming inside her, a raw, agonized howl that tore through her mind like claws raking across glass. Mate. 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 But he didn't want her. He didn't want her. Nobody wanted her. I reject this bond, Kale Draven said, his voice ringing out clear and final, carrying the weight of absolute authority. I reject Vyra Duskalo as my mate, my partner, and my equal. She is not worthy. She will never be worthy. I sever this connection before it can poison my bloodline, corrupt my pack, or weaken my position. Let it be known across all territories, this pairing is void. This Omega is nothing to me. The words hit her like a wrecking ball swung directly at her chest, and then the pain came. It started as a sharp, searing agony in her sternum, like someone had driven a white-hot spike directly through her heart. Then it spread, fast and vicious, racing down her arms into her stomach, through her legs, up her spine. Every nerve in her body lit up with fire and glass and broken metal and acid. Her bones felt like they were splintering. Her blood felt like it was boiling. Vyra screamed. She couldn't help it. The sound ripped out of her throat, raw and animalistic and broken, and she collapsed fully, writhing on the ground as the bond, fragile, barely formed, but real, so terribly real, shattered inside her like a crystal dropped from a great height. Her wolf howled and howled and howled. A sound of such pure, devastating grief that even some of the watching wolves winced. And then, silence. The howling stopped. Not because the pain had ended, because her wolf had broken. Gone silent. Retreated so far into the depths of Vyra's consciousness that she couldn't feel her anymore. Vyra lay on the frozen earth, gasping, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the blood trickling from her nose. Her body felt wrong, hollow, like someone had reached inside her chest and carved out everything that mattered, everything that made her whole. Her ears rang. The world tilted and spun. She tasted copper and bile. Pathetic, someone muttered from the crowd. Can't even handle a simple rejection? Weak Omega trash. This is embarrassing to watch. Someone put her out of her misery. Get her out of here, Kale Draven said, his tone bored now. Dismissive. Like he'd already moved on, already forgotten her. She's making a scene. She's wasting everyone's time. We have other ceremonies to complete tonight, and I won't have this— He waved a hand vaguely in her direction. Spectacle ruining the evening. Two guards stepped forward, massive betas with faces like carved stone and eyes like dead fish. They grabbed Vyra by the arms, hauling her up with no care for gentleness. She didn't resist, couldn't. Her legs wouldn't work. Her mind was static and screaming and empty all at once. They dragged her. Through the crowd, past the laughing faces, twisted with cruel amusement, past the Omegas who wouldn't meet her eyes, who turned away, who whispered to each other behind their hands, past the Alphas, who sneered and spat crude remarks that made her skin crawl. Hey, Omega, need a real Alpha to show you what you're missing? Nah, man, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Damaged goods now, anyway. Rejected Omega. Nobody's going to want her after this. Might as well send her to the breeding farms. Even they have standards. Someone spat at her. The glob of saliva landed on her cheek, warm and vile and humiliating. She didn't wipe it away. Didn't move. Didn't fight. What was the point? She was nothing. He'd said it, proven it, and everyone had watched and agreed. The guards hauled her past the edge of the gathering, away from the bonfire's warmth, into the cold darkness beyond. They moved fast, uncaring as Vyra's bare feet dragged through frozen mud and sharp stones and dead leaves. She felt nothing. The physical pain was a whisper compared to the agony still tearing through her chest, the emptiness where her wolf used to be. Please, she heard herself whisper. The word came out broken, barely audible. Please, I didn't do anything. Shut up, one of the guards growled. His grip on her arm tightened until she felt bones grinding. You brought this on yourself. How? The words scraped out of her throat like broken glass. How did I never asked for this. I never wanted— You really thought you were good enough for him? The other guard laughed, harsh and mocking and genuinely amused. You? The runt who can barely lift a water bucket without shaking, who faints at the sight of blood, who's never won a single challenge, never shown an ounce of strength or courage or anything remotely useful. You're a genetic failure, Omega, a mistake that should have been corrected years ago. The fact that you're still alive is pure charity. The Alpha showing mercy he doesn't owe you. Vyra's vision swam. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream that she'd never asked for this, never asked to be born weak, never asked to be paired with an Alpha who saw her as garbage, never asked for any of this nightmare. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, in the darkest part of her heart that she'd never admitted to anyone, she wondered if they were right. Maybe she was a mistake. Maybe she did deserve this. Maybe the world would be better off if she just disappeared. They reached the pack house, a massive structure of stone and timber that dominated the center of the territory, 3 stories tall and sprawling across an acre of cleared land. Torches burned in brackets along the walls. Wolves moved in and out of the main entrance, going about their business, barely sparing Vyra a glance as the guards dragged her past. But the guards didn't take her inside. Instead, they veered left, toward a narrow staircase that descended into darkness at the side of the building. Stone steps, worn smooth by centuries of use, leading down into the earth. The holding pen. Vyra's heart stuttered. "No," she gasped, finding her voice suddenly, panic flaring through the numbness. "Please, not there. Please." "Shut up." They didn't slow down. They threw her down the stairs. Vyra hit stone, her shoulder slamming hard enough to send stars exploding across her vision. She tumbled, unable to catch herself, and landed in a heap at the bottom, her head cracking against the floor. Pain flared through her body, sharp and immediate, layering on top of everything else. Above her, one of the guards sneered down, his face illuminated by the torch he held. "Enjoy your stay, Runt. Council meets at dawn to decide your fate, though I think we all know how that's going to go." He grinned, showing too many teeth. "One way or another, you'll be out of here soon enough." The iron door slammed shut with a sound like thunder. Darkness swallowed her whole. Complete, absolute, suffocating. Vyra lay there for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling nothing except the cold seeping up from the stone beneath her and the emptiness in her chest. The cell was small, 10 feet by 10 feet, maybe less. Stone walls slick with moisture that dripped constantly, echoing in the silence. No windows, no light except the thin crack beneath the door, which showed nothing but more darkness. The air was thick with the smell of mold and old blood and fear and despair. How many wolves had been kept here? How many had died here? The stones themselves seemed soaked in suffering. She pushed herself up slowly, every movement an agony. Her shoulder screamed in protest, probably dislocated or fractured. Her ribs ached with every breath. Her head pounded where she'd hit it. But worst of all was the emptiness in her chest. Her wolf was gone. Not dead, which would have been cleaner, more final. Worse. Silent. Unreachable. Vyra had heard stories of wolves who lost their other half, rejected mates who survived the initial break. They became hollow. Shells. Most of them didn't last a year. The human side couldn't survive without the wolf. The wolf couldn't survive without the human. The bond between the two halves was what made them whole, what gave them strength and purpose in life. Together, they were complete. Apart, they were nothing. She was nothing. Footsteps echoed above her, muffled by stone and distance. Voices drifted down through the cracks in the ceiling, distorted but understandable. "Can't believe he actually did it in front of everyone." Serves her right, honestly. Did you see her? Like a damn corpse walking. No wonder he rejected her. Heard they're exiling her. Council's not even going to bother with the trial. Sending her to the waste tomorrow at dawn. About time. One less useless mouth to feed. Maybe the rogues will finish her off quick. Or maybe she'll just freeze. Either way, problem solved. Honestly, it's a mercy. Can you imagine living after that kind of humiliation? Better off dead. Exile. The word settled over her like a funeral shroud. The wastes were a dead zone beyond the pack borders. A stretch of barren land to the north where rogue wolves, criminals, and the truly desperate went to disappear. No food, no shelter, no law, no mercy. Just endless miles of frozen tundra, jagged rocks, twisted forests, and things that hunted in the dark. Things that even healthy, strong wolves feared. You went to the waste to die. Slowly, painfully, alone, torn apart by rogues or exposure or starvation, whichever got you first. Vyra closed her eyes and pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around herself in a futile attempt at warmth. Her body shook, from cold, from pain, from shock, from everything. Maybe that was fine. Maybe she deserved it. Maybe the world would be better off without her taking up space and resources. Maybe Kyle Draven was right. Maybe she was just a mistake that should have been corrected a long time ago. Time lost meaning in the darkness. She didn't know if hours passed or days. There was no way to track it. No light, no sound except the constant drip, drip, drip of water on stone and the occasional scurrying of rats in the walls. Her stomach cramped with hunger, twisting into knots. Her throat burned with thirst, dry as sand. She curled up tighter in the corner, trying to conserve what little body heat she had left, and waited. For what she didn't know. Death, maybe. Judgment. The end. Anything. The door screeched open without warning. Light flooded in, blinding after so long in absolute darkness. Vyra threw up a hand, squinting against the sudden brightness that felt like knives stabbing into her eyes. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by torches. "Get up." It was a woman's voice, cold, sharp, familiar in a way that made Vyra's stomach drop. Vyra didn't move. Couldn't. Her body felt like lead, heavy and unresponsive. "I said get up, Omega. Now." Hands grabbed her, hauling her to her feet with brutal efficiency and zero gentleness. Vyra's legs shook, nearly gave out, but the woman held her upright with an iron grip that felt like steel bands around her arms. As Vyra's eyes adjusted to the light, streaming tears from the brightness, she realized who it was. Sable Varn, Kale Draven's second, his right hand, his most trusted warrior, a female alpha in her own right, which was rare. Maybe 1 in every 100 alphas born was female, and they were inevitably fiercer, more ruthless, more driven than their male counterparts. Sable was tall, nearly 6 feet even without the combat boots she always wore, with short cropped black hair that emphasized the sharp angles of her face and eyes like chips of ice. Scars traced her jaw and neck and disappeared beneath her collar, trophies from battles Vyra couldn't imagine. She wore dark leather armor, fitted and practical, twin blades strapped to her back in an X pattern, and moved with the fluid, economical grace of a predator born and trained. Sable looked at her like she was looking at roadkill on the side of a highway. Less than nothing. An inconvenience. "You're being exiled," Sable said flatly, no preamble, no softening. Effective immediately by order of the Council and the Alpha Supreme. "You'll be escorted to the northern border and released beyond the wards. If you attempt to return, if you so much as set 1 foot back across the boundary line, you'll be killed on sight. No warning, no trial, no mercy, no second chances. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Vyra's throat was too tight to speak. She nodded, the movement sending fresh waves of pain through her skull. "Good." Sable released her, and Vyra staggered, catching herself against the slimy wall. "You have 5 minutes to collect anything you own. Personal belongings, clothing, whatever. Then you're gone. The guards will take you to your quarters to gather your things. Don't try anything stupid." "I don't—" Vyra's voice came out as a rasp, barely recognizable. "I don't have anything. I don't own anything." It was true. The dress she'd worn to the ceremony had been provided by the pack. Her quarters were a shared room with 3 other Omegas, and she'd never had personal possessions worth mentioning. A few changes of clothes, all worn and ill-fitting hand-me-downs. A hairbrush with half the bristles missing. Nothing else. Nothing worth taking. Nothing worth keeping. Sable's expression didn't change, didn't soften even a fraction. "Then I guess you're ready." She turned and walked back up the stairs, her boots echoing on stone, each step precise and measured. 2 guards appeared at the top, waiting. One of them, a scarred beta with dead eyes and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile, grabbed Vyra's arm hard enough to bruise. "Move." They walked her through the pack house in chains. Actual chains. Iron cuffs locked around her wrists, connected by a short length of heavy links that rattled with every step, the sound echoing through the corridors. Like she was dangerous. Like she might attack someone. Like she was a criminal, a threat, something that needed to be restrained. Like she was anything other than a broken girl who could barely stand without help. Vyra could barely process the humiliation of it, the cruelty, the absolute unnecessary brutality of it all. But she walked because what else could she do? The halls were full of people despite the late hour. Word had spread fast. It always did in packed territories where gossip was currency and entertainment was scarce. Wolves lined the corridors, watching, whispering, pointing, some openly laughing. Some looked curious, craning their necks to get a better view. Most looked contemptuous, their lips curled in disgust. A few looked pleased, satisfied, like they'd just watched justice being served. That's her, the rejected one. Gods, she looks even worse than before. Heard she pissed herself when he said no. Pathetic. Bet she thought she'd be Luna. Stupid, delusional Omega. Can you imagine? Her standing beside the Alpha Supreme? It's actually funny when you think about it. A young beta boy, no older than 12, darted forward and threw a rock. It hit Vyra square in the shoulder, sharp and sudden. She stumbled, crying out, but the guards kept her upright, kept her moving, didn't slow down. His mother, standing in a doorway with her arms crossed, laughed. Actually laughed. Ruffled his hair like he'd done something clever, something praiseworthy. Good aim, sweetheart. No one stopped them. No one said a word in Vyra's defense. No one even looked uncomfortable. They reached the main doors, massive oak panels reinforced with bands of iron, tall enough to accommodate wolves in their shifted forms. Beyond them, through the gaps, Vyra could see the night, black and freezing. Snow had started to fall harder now, driven by a wind that howled like something dying, like something in pain. Sable stood at the threshold, arms crossed, face expressionless. "The Alpha Supreme has one more message for you," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, flat and cold as winter stone. "He says to tell you that you're lucky, that in the old days, defective Omegas like you were culled at birth to keep the bloodline strong, that you should be grateful, deeply, profoundly grateful, that he's letting you live at all. That exile is a mercy you don't deserve but are receiving anyway because he's more compassionate than you have any right to expect." Vyra's chest tightened until she thought her ribs might crack. Grateful. He wanted her to be grateful. For this. For the rejection, the humiliation, the exile, the death sentence he was sending her toward. Grateful. Sable reached down and unlocked the chains. They clattered to the ground with a sound like breaking bones, heavy and final. "Walk north," she said, pointing toward the darkness beyond the doors. "Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't rest. Don't look back. And don't ever, ever let me see your face again. If you do, if I catch even a glimpse of you anywhere near our borders, I'll kill you myself. Slowly, painfully. I'll make it last days, weeks if I'm feeling creative. Do you understand me?" It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A guarantee. Vyra nodded, the movement mechanical. "Good. Now get out of my sight." Vyra stepped outside. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. She was still in the ceremonial dress, thin, useless cotton that might as well have been tissue paper for all the protection it offered. The fabric was already soaked through from the snow, clinging to her skin like ice. No shoes, no coat, no supplies, no food, no water, no weapons, nothing. Just her. And the darkness. And the cold. And the certainty that she was going to die out here. She took one step forward, then another, then another. Behind her, the pack house doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed through her bones, through her soul. Laughter erupted inside, muffled by wood and stone, but still audible. Cheers, celebration, like they were toasting her departure, like this was a party. Maybe it was. Maybe they were all inside right now, glasses raised, congratulating each other on getting rid of the pack's biggest embarrassment. Vyra kept walking. The snow fell harder, thick and fast, already accumulating on her shoulders and hair. The wind tore at her, ripping through the thin dress like it wasn't even there, stealing what little body heat she had left. Her bare feet sank into the drifts with every step, each one an agony of cold and sharp ice crystals that cut like glass. She couldn't feel her toes anymore. Her fingers were going numb, her lips felt frozen, cracked and bleeding. She walked and walked and walked. The pack house disappeared behind her, swallowed by darkness and distance and the curtain of falling snow. The trees closed in, tall, skeletal things that looked like they were reaching for her with gnarled, twisted fingers. The forest was silent except for the wind howling through the branches. No birds, no animals, no signs of life. Just her. And the cold. And the emptiness inside her chest where her wolf used to be, where warmth and purpose and connection used to live. Vyra didn't know how long she walked. Time blurred and stretched and lost all meaning. Minutes, hours, days. The darkness was absolute. The cold was everywhere. Her mind drifted, thoughts fragmenting, memories surfacing and sinking like debris in dark water. She thought about her parents, dead since she was 6. killed in a rogue attack on the eastern border. She barely remembered their faces anymore, just impressions. Warmth, safety. A woman's laugh, a man's hand, large and gentle, ruffling her hair. Gone. She thought about the pack, the only home she'd ever known, and how easily they'd thrown her away. Like garbage, like something rotten that needed to be removed before it contaminated everything else. She thought about Cale Draven's face, the disgust in his eyes, the contempt in his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was less than nothing, less than an insect, less than dirt, worthless, defective, a mistake. She thought about dying. It would be easy, so easy. Just stop walking, lie down in the snow, let the cold take her. It wouldn't even hurt after a while, they said. You just got sleepy, tired, and then you drifted away, peaceful, quiet, simple, clean, over. But something in her, some stubborn, stupid, irrational part that refused to break completely, kept her legs moving. One step, then another, then another. Even though she didn't know why, even though there was no point, even though she was walking toward nothing except a slower, more painful death. She kept moving, until she couldn't anymore. Vyra's legs gave out without warning. She collapsed into a snowdrift, her body folding like a puppet with cut strings. The cold was absolute now, beyond pain, beyond sensation. She couldn't feel anything below her waist. Her breath came in shallow, rattling gasps, each one harder than the last. Her vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. This is it, she thought distantly, clinically, like she was observing someone else's death. This is how it ends, alone, forgotten. Nothing. She closed her eyes and waited for the darkness to take her, waited for it to be over, waited for peace. But it didn't come. Instead, she heard something. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Crunching through the snow, getting closer. Vyra's eyes cracked open, barely, lids heavy as lead. A shadow loomed over her, blocking out what little light filtered through the clouds. No, not a shadow. A wolf. Massive. Easily twice the size of a normal wolf, maybe even bigger. Its fur was matted and dark, filthy with mud and blood and gods knew what else, covered in scars and old wounds that had healed wrong, twisted, leaving the flesh beneath deformed. Its eyes were yellow and wild, pupils dilated with madness and hunger. Foam flecked its muzzle. Rogue. Feral. Completely gone. It growled, low, rumbling, hungry. Vyra stared up at it. She should have been afraid, should have screamed, should have tried to run, to fight, to do something. But she felt nothing, just emptiness, exhaustion, relief almost. At least it would be quick. Go ahead, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind, cracked and broken. Finish it, please. Just make it quick. The rogue's lips pulled back, revealing teeth like daggers, yellow and sharp. Saliva dripped from its jaws, freezing before it hit the ground. It lowered its head, muscles bunching beneath scarred fur, preparing to lunge, to tear, to kill. Vyra closed her eyes and waited. And inside her, deep, deep down where her wolf should have been, something stirred. Not her wolf. Something else. Something that felt ancient beyond measure. Something vast and terrible and powerful. Something that had been sleeping, waiting. The rogue lunged, jaws snapping toward her throat, claws extended, death incoming. And then it stopped, froze mid-leap, as if it had hit an invisible wall, its body suspended in the air for a heartbeat before it crashed to the ground. Its eyes went wide. The madness drained out of them in an instant, replaced by something Vyra had never seen in a rogue before, something she didn't think rogues were capable of feeling. Terror. Pure, primal, bone-deep terror. The wolf whimpered, actually whimpered, a sound of such complete submission and fear that it sent chills down Vyra's spine. It backed away, scrambling, its legs tangling in its haste to retreat, its ears flattened against its skull, its tail tucked so tight between its legs it almost disappeared, its whole body lowered, belly scraping the snow. And then it turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, fleeing like the hounds of hell themselves were chasing it, its howl of fear echoing through the trees, bouncing off stone and ice, fading into the distance. Vyra lay there, gasping, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought they might crack. What the hell just... She looked down at her hands. They were glowing, faint, silver, like starlight trapped beneath her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat, flowing through her veins like liquid light. The glow spread as she watched, up her arms, across her chest, down her legs, lighting her up from the inside. It didn't hurt, didn't burn. It felt warm, almost alive, like something sentient was moving through her body, exploring, claiming territory. And for the first time since the rejection, since her wolf had gone silent, since her world had shattered, Vyra felt something other than pain and emptiness and despair. She felt power, raw, untamed, ancient, hers. The glow faded after a long moment, sinking back beneath her skin like it had never been there, disappearing as mysteriously as it had appeared. But Vyra could still feel it, a current running through her veins, a presence in the hollow space where her wolf had been. Not her wolf, something different, something other, something she didn't understand at all. But it was there, real, undeniable. What the hell was that? She pushed herself up slowly, her body protesting every movement, muscles screaming. But she was alive, still breathing, still here. And somehow, impossibly, she felt stronger than she had before. The cold didn't feel as sharp anymore. The bite of it dulled. The hunger had receded to a distant ache instead of the gnawing agony it had been. She looked around, trying to orient herself. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction. No landmarks, no paths, no signs of civilization, just trees and snow and darkness and silence. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Something had changed. Something fundamental and irreversible. Something inside her had woken up. And whatever it was, whatever had just saved her from that rogue, it was strong. Stronger than anything she'd ever felt before. Stronger than her wolf had ever been. Vyra stood, her legs shaking but holding. She took a breath, deep and full, filling her lungs with frozen air. Then another. And then she started walking. Not back toward the pack, not back to the people who'd thrown her away like garbage. Forward, deeper into the wastes, into the unknown, into whatever came next. Because if she was going to die out here, and she probably was, she'd do it on her feet. Fighting, moving, refusing to give up even when every rational part of her brain screamed that there was no point. And if she didn't die, if whatever was inside her kept her alive, if this power, this strange silver light, was real and not just a hallucination from hypothermia, then maybe she'd survive. Maybe she'd learn what this was. Maybe she'd get strong enough to what? Go back? Face them again? Face him again? Vyra didn't know. Couldn't think that far ahead. All she knew was that she was still alive, still breathing, still moving, and that had to be enough for now. The snow fell, the wind howled, and Vyra Descalo disappeared into the darkness of the wastes, alone and broken and carrying something inside her that even she didn't understand yet. But she wasn't gone. Not yet. Not even close. This was just the beginning. The waste didn't kill her. That was the first surprise. Vyra woke on the 7th day, or maybe the 8th. She'd lost count somewhere between hypothermia and delirium, curled beneath an outcropping of rock that barely deserved to be called shelter. Snow had drifted against the opening during the night, sealing her in a tomb of ice and stone. Her breath came out in white clouds that hung in the air like ghosts. Her body should have been frozen solid, muscles locked in rigor mortis, skin blue and lifeless. But she was warm. Not comfortable, not safe, but warm in a way that defied every law of nature and survival she'd ever learned. The silver light beneath her skin pulsed faintly, visible through the thin fabric of her ruined dress, even in the dim pre-dawn darkness. It moved like liquid mercury through her veins, pooling in her chest where her wolf used to be, spreading outward in waves that left tingling heat in their wake. She could see it when she looked down at her hands, threads of luminescence tracing the paths of arteries and veins, glowing brighter with each heartbeat. She didn't understand it, didn't know what it was, or where it came from, or what it meant, or why it had chosen her, but it was keeping her alive, and that was enough for now. Vyra pushed against the snow barrier, her hands, bare, pale, should have been black with frostbite and gangrene, breaking through the drift easily. Too easily. The ice crumbled like sugar under her fingers, offering no resistance. She crawled out into the gray morning light and stood, brushing snow from her dress with movements that were becoming automatic. Survival routines. Wake up. Check for injuries. Assess the environment. Find water. Find food if possible. Keep moving. Her feet were bare. Had been for over a week now. The skin should have been destroyed, toes lost to exposure, flesh necrotizing and falling away from bone. Instead, they were pink, healthy. Unmarked except for a few shallow cuts that were already healing as she watched, the edges of torn skin knitting together with visible speed, new tissue forming where there should have been infection and decay. What the hell am I becoming? The question had no answer. Only evidence. Only the undeniable fact that she was changing into something that shouldn't exist, something that violated everything she knew about wolf biology and omega limitations and the natural order. A sound cut through the silence. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Heavy. Deliberate. Confident. Vyra's head snapped up, every muscle in her body tensing. Her senses, sharper now than they'd ever been, enhanced by whatever was happening to her, picked out the details. 4 separate rhythms. 3 lighter, moving in sync. 1 heavier, leading. The wastes weren't empty. She'd learned that fast and brutal. Rogues roamed in packs, feral things with no humanity left, just hunger and madness and violence coded into what remained of their minds. She'd seen 3 of them tearing apart a deer 2 days ago, their muzzles red with blood, their eyes wild with the kind of insanity that came from losing your human half entirely. She'd hidden in a hollow tree trunk until they left, barely breathing, praying they wouldn't scent her. But these footsteps were different. Measured, controlled, purposeful. Human. No, not human. Alpha. The scent hit her a second later, carried on the wind, and Vyra's stomach dropped like a stone into freezing water. Pine and smoke and cold steel. Authority and dominance wrapped in flesh and blood. So thick it made the air heavy, made breathing difficult, made her hindbrain scream at her to submit, to bow, to show throat. She knew that scent, would know it anywhere, had smelled it in her nightmares every time she managed to fall into fitful sleep. Impossible. Why would he? A figure stepped out from between the trees 50 yards away, moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd never had to fear anything in their entire life. Someone for whom the world simply arranged itself according to their will. Tall, broad, predatory grace in every movement. Kale Draven Thorn. Vyra's heart stopped, then started again, hammering so hard against her ribs she thought they might crack, thought her chest might simply explode from the force of it. What was he doing here? Why would he come to the wastes, to this dead zone where even rogues feared to tread? Why would he waste his time, his resources, his attention on her? He wasn't alone. Sable emerged behind him, her hand resting on her sword hilt, eyes scanning the terrain with the methodical focus of a trained hunter. 2 more wolves flanked them, betas, large and armed with short swords and hunting knives, their expressions flat and professional. A hunting party. Small, elite, deadly. They were tracking something, looking for her. And Vyra's first instinct was to run, to disappear back into the rocks, to hide, to avoid this confrontation because she wasn't ready, wasn't strong enough, wasn't prepared to face him again after what he'd done, after how he'd destroyed her. No. The thought came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere new, the place where the silver light lived, where something ancient and vast and utterly unafraid had taken up residence. No more running, no more hiding, no more cowering before wolves who thought they owned the world. Vyra stepped out into the open, moving with deliberate slowness, making herself visible, challenging them to see her, daring them to approach. Kale Draven saw her immediately. His head turned, wolf gold eyes locking onto her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, made the air between them crackle with something electric and dangerous. He stopped walking, raised one hand. His pack stopped behind him, waiting, watching. For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying ice and the promise of more snow. Vyra stood her ground, barefoot in the snow, wearing nothing but a ruined ceremonial dress that hung off her frame like grave clothes, her hair matted and tangled with twigs and dirt, her skin smudged with grime and dried blood from a dozen small injuries. She should have looked pathetic, broken, defeated, a victim. But something in her posture, spine straight despite the cold, chin up, eyes clear, and unwavering and utterly unafraid, made her look anything but weak, made her look dangerous. Cale Draven's expression shifted. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked beneath the practiced neutrality of an alpha who'd learned never to show weakness. His nostrils flared as he scented the air, analyzing, cataloging the information his wolf senses provided. Then his eyes narrowed. Confusion, suspicion, something else she couldn't name. "You're alive," he said. His voice carried across the distance, flat and emotionless. Statement of fact, not relief or concern or anything approaching human feeling. Vyra didn't answer, didn't move, just stared at him with eyes that had seen too much death in the past week to be afraid of one man, Alpha Supreme or not. Cale Draven started walking toward her, slow, deliberate, each step measured and controlled, the movement of a predator approaching prey he wasn't entirely sure about. His pack followed at a distance, maintaining formation, giving him space but ready to intervene if needed. He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to attack if he wanted, close enough to smell her properly, close enough to see the changes in detail. His eyes traveled over her, assessing, cataloging every deviation from the broken Omega he'd exiled, taking in the bare feet that should have been ruined, blackened stumps, the skin that should have been blue with hypothermia and frostbite, the way she stood, balanced, steady, weight distributed perfectly, not shaking despite the sub-zero temperature and her complete lack of proper clothing, the faint shimmer beneath her skin that looked like starlight. "You should be dead," he said quietly, and there was something in his voice now, not quite concern, closer to scientific curiosity, like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. "I know," Vyra replied. Her voice came out rough, unused for days except for talking to herself in the dark, but stronger than it had been. Steadier, no tremor, no fear. Disappointed? Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or irritation that she wasn't responding the way he expected, the way Omegas were supposed to respond to Alphas, with deference and submission and gratitude for any attention. "Don't be stupid," he said sharply. "The bond—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching so hard she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "What bond?" Vyra's voice was ice. Permafrost. The kind of cold that killed slowly and without mercy. "You rejected me. Remember? In front of 500 witnesses. You said I was nothing, worthless, a genetic failure that should have been culled at birth. You said my existence was an insult." Cale Draven's hands flexed into fists. "I said what needed to be said. You humiliated me." Each word came out clipped, sharp, precise strikes designed to wound. "You destroyed me in front of everyone I've ever known. You laughed while they laughed. You sent me here to die alone and forgotten. So what the hell are you doing here now? What could you possibly want from me?" "The bond didn't break," Cale Draven said through gritted teeth, the admission clearly costing him something. "It should have. I rejected you completely. I severed it with intent and will. The ritual says that should be enough, but it's still there. Weaker, damaged, hanging by threads, but there. And it's—" He stopped again, visibly struggling with something. "It's affecting me. My wolf. My control. Everything. I can't shift properly. Can't sleep. Can't think straight. And it's getting worse every day." Vyra stared at him. Then she laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter and completely devoid of humor. It scraped out of her throat like broken glass dragged across stone, echoing off the canyon walls, coming back at them distorted and ugly. "You're in pain," she said flatly, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh no, poor baby. The big bad Alpha Supreme is suffering. His wolf isn't cooperating. He can't sleep. And you came all the way out here, into the wastes you exiled me to, risking your life and your pack's lives to tell me about it. Why? You want sympathy? You want me to feel sorry for you? You want me to fix it for you so you can go back to your comfortable life?" "I want you to come back," Cale Draven said, and the words sounded like they cost him everything. Like he'd rather cut out his own tongue than say them, but had no choice. Temporarily. Just until we can figure out how to sever this properly. The elders were wrong about the ritual. Something went wrong with the ceremony, but we can fix it. They're researching, looking through the old texts, finding a solution. But I need you alive and accessible for that. I need you to come back. Fix it, Vyra repeated slowly, tasting the words. Yes. So you can reject me again, more thoroughly this time? Make sure it takes? Kale Draven's expression hardened, walls slamming down. I'm trying to be reasonable here, Omega. I could have left you out here to rot. I could have forgotten you existed and just dealt with the pain. Instead, I'm offering you a way back. Shelter, food, warmth, safety, medical attention. All you have to do is cooperate long enough for the elders to break the bond properly. It's a fair deal. A fair deal, Vyra echoed. And then what happens? After the bond is broken? After you're free and whole again? Then you leave. Find another pack if one will take you. Or go rogue if that's what you want. Or stay in the territory as a servant. I don't care. But this... He gestured between them with sharp, frustrated movements. This ends. This connection, this weight, this constant pull. It ends. We both get what we want. What I want, Vyra said slowly, is for you to suffer the way you made me suffer. What I want is for you to feel what it's like to have your soul ripped apart in front of people who laugh. What I want is justice. And you're not offering me any of that, are you? You're offering me scraps, charity. The opportunity to help you at my own expense. Again, Kale Draven's eyes narrowed. You're being childish. I'm being honest. You're being stupid. I'm offering you survival. Take it or don't. But make the decision fast because my patience has limits. Vyra felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest, crystallize, harden into something unbreakable. No, she said. Kale Draven blinked. Like he hadn't heard her correctly, like the word didn't compute. What? I said no. Vyra took a step forward, and immediately Kale Draven's betas tensed, hands moving to weapons, bodies shifting into defensive postures. She ignored them completely, focused entirely on the alpha in front of her. You don't get to decide anymore. You threw me away. You exiled me. You wanted me gone, dead, erased from your perfect little world like I was a stain on your reputation. So I'm gone. Whatever's happening to you now, whatever pain you're feeling, whatever consequences you're facing, that's your problem, not mine, never mine again. You don't understand what you're... I understand perfectly, Vyra cut him off, her voice rising, carrying across the canyon with surprising strength. You're suffering now, so suddenly I'm worth something. Suddenly I'm useful. Suddenly I deserve to live. But the second you're fixed, the second the bond is gone and you're whole again, I'm trash. Something to be discarded. Something beneath your notice. Well, guess what, Alpha? I'm done. I'd rather freeze to death out here, alone and free, than help you. I'd rather die than give you what you want. Kale Draven's eyes flashed gold, his wolf pushing close to the surface, making his pupils dilate and his canines elongate slightly. That's not your decision to make. The hell it isn't. I am the Alpha Supreme, Call, Kale Draven said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble that made the air vibrate, made the snow at their feet tremble slightly. I command 6 packs across the northern territories. Thousands of wolves answer to me without question. When I give an order, it's followed. When I make a decision, it's final. You will come back. You will cooperate with the elders. And you will do it because I'm telling you to. Because that's how this works. Because you're Omega and I'm Alpha, and the hierarchy is absolute. Or what? Vyra challenged, taking another step forward, closing the distance between them to something dangerous and volatile. She was close enough to smell him properly now. Pine and smoke, and underneath it all, something sour. Stress. Exhaustion. Pain poorly hidden. The scent of someone barely holding themselves together. You'll kill me? Go ahead, do it. I'm already dead. You killed me a week ago in front of everyone. This? She gestured at herself with sharp, angry movements. This is just leftovers. This is just meat that hasn't figured out it's supposed to stop moving yet. Sable moved forward, her hand going to her sword, face set in hard lines. Alpha, let me handle this. Let me bring her in. We don't have time for... Stay back, Kale Draven snapped, not taking his eyes off Vyra for even a second. All of you, nobody moves. Nobody touches her. But Alpha, I said stay back. The command cracked like a whip, absolute and final. Sable froze, confusion and concern warring on her scarred face. The betas shifted uncomfortably, but held position, clearly uncertain about what was happening, about why their alpha was so focused on one broken omega who should have been easy to subdue. The tension ratcheted higher, building like pressure before an earthquake. Vyra could feel it in the air, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. She should have been afraid. Should have backed down, submitted, shown throat like every instinct bred into her over thousands of generations demanded. But those instincts were quiet now, drowned out by something else, something that didn't fear him, something that looked at the Alpha Supreme and saw just a man, just another wolf who could bleed. You're different, Kale Draven said suddenly, his eyes narrowing as he studied her with uncomfortable intensity. Your scent, it's changed. You smell like… He stopped, searching for words. Like winter and starlight, like something old. What happened to you out here? What did you encounter? I survived, Vyra said simply. No thanks to you. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Show me, Kale Draven demanded, his voice taking on the alpha command that compelled obedience, that made wolves bend and submit against their will. Show me what you're hiding. I can see it under your skin. That light. That power. Show me what it is. Vyra felt the command wash over her, felt it try to sink hooks into her mind, try to force compliance, and felt it slide off like water off stone. Whatever was inside her now didn't answer to alphas, didn't recognize their authority, didn't bow. No, she said again, and the word came out wrapped in something that made Kale Draven's eyes widen, made him take a step back despite himself. They stared at each other. Kale Draven studied her for a long moment, his expression cycling through emotions too fast to track. Then he sighed, and some of the aggressive posture melted out of him. His shoulders dropped slightly, his hands unclenched. He looked tired. Actually, genuinely tired in a way she'd never seen him before. Vulnerable, almost human. I didn't want this, he said quietly, his voice losing the command edge, becoming something closer to actual conversation. Any of this. When the elders told me the pairing chose you, I thought it was a mistake, a cosmic joke, some kind of test I was supposed to fail. Look at you, look at me. We don't match. We were never going to work. You're small and weak and fragile. He gestured at himself. I'm this. We would have destroyed each other. I thought rejecting you publicly would be kinder than dragging it out, letting you hope, letting the pack see their Alpha Supreme tied to someone who couldn't protect them. Kinder, Vyra repeated, her voice hollow, empty. Yes. You think what you did was kind, kinder than the alternative. If I'd accepted the bond, if I'd made you my Luna, you would have been a target. Do you have any idea what that would have meant? The challenges you'd have faced? The enemies who would have come for you to get to me? Other alphas testing you, looking for weakness, trying to prove I'd made a mistake by choosing you? The pack itself would have torn you apart within a month for being too weak to protect them, too fragile to lead them. Someone would have killed you, and I would have been powerless to stop it without looking weak myself. I saved your life by rejecting you. Vyra stared at him, actually stared, unable to process what she was hearing. You saved my life, she said slowly, each word carefully enunciated, by destroying everything I was, by humiliating me in front of everyone I've ever known, by making me a joke, by exiling me to freeze to death in the wastes, surrounded by rogues and monsters. That's what you call saving me. You're alive, aren't you? The words hung between them like a noose. Vyra felt something break inside her, not the bond, that was already shattered, hanging by frayed threads that caused them both pain. Something else. Some last fragile hope she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying in a locked box in the deepest part of her heart. The hope that maybe he'd had a reason, that maybe there was more to it than simple cruelty, that maybe he'd cared, just a little, and done what he thought was right even though it hurt. But there wasn't. He genuinely believed he'd done her a favor, genuinely thought he'd been merciful, genuinely saw himself as her savior instead of her destroyer. Get out, Vyra said, her voice shaking now. Not with fear, with rage so pure and hot it felt like fire in her veins, like the silver light responding to her emotion, feeding on it. Get out of my sight. Go back to your pack, your throne, your perfect life where everyone worships you and nobody questions your decisions. And don't ever come looking for me again. I can't do that, Kael Draven said, frustration bleeding into his voice. The bond, it's not just pain, it's affecting everything, my strength, my healing, my connection to the pack. I'm getting weaker while it stays broken. And if I'm weak, the pack is vulnerable. Other alphas will challenge me, people will die. So I need this fixed. I need you to come back so we can end this properly. I don't care about the bond, Vyra screamed, and the sound echoed off the canyon walls, multiplying, coming back at them from all directions like a chorus of her rage. I don't care if you're in pain. I don't care if you can't sleep or shift or lead your precious pack. I don't care if other alphas challenge you and tear you apart. You did this. You wanted me gone, so I'm gone. Live with the consequences. Suffer with them. Die with them if that's what it takes. Kildraven's expression hardened. Walls slamming back up. The vulnerable moment gone, replaced by cold alpha authority. I gave you a chance, he said flatly. I came here personally, offered you a way out of this frozen hell, tried to negotiate like you were worth negotiating with, and you threw it back in my face. Fine. I tried the civilized approach. Now we'll do this the hard way. He nodded to his betas. They moved fast, spreading out with practiced efficiency, flanking her on both sides while Sable circled around to cut off any retreat toward the forest. Vyra's heart rate spiked, adrenaline flooding her system. What do you think you're doing? You're coming back, Kael Draven said, his voice utterly devoid of emotion now. Cold. Factual. Final. Whether you want to or not, whether you cooperate or fight, I need this bond severed, and you're the only one who can help make that happen. I tried asking nicely. I tried explaining. I tried reasoning with you like you were capable of understanding. Now I'm done trying. Now I'm telling you, submit or we'll make you submit. Your choice, Omega. You're insane, Vyra breathed, backing up a step. Then another. You can't kidnap me. You can't force me. I'm the Alpha Supreme. I can do whatever I need to do to protect my pack. And if that means dragging one defective Omega back against her will, then that's what happens. Sable drew her sword in one smooth, practiced motion, the blade singing as it cleared the sheath, the sound like death-given voice. The betas followed suit immediately, pulling weapons from sheaths and belts, short swords, daggers, lengths of weighted chain that clinked softly in the cold air. Armed, ready, prepared to use force. Vyra backed up another step, then another. The cliff edge was getting closer behind her. She had no weapons, no training, no pack to call for help, nothing except the silver light flared inside her chest. Warm, ready, waiting for her to call it, eager almost. Last chance, Kael Draven said, his voice carrying absolute finality. Come willingly, right now, and this doesn't have to get ugly. We'll chain you if we have to, but we don't have to hurt you. Make this easy on yourself. Vyra looked at him. At Sable with her sword raised. At the betas closing in from both sides, forming a net she couldn't slip through. At the cliff edge behind her. At her options, which were none. Then she smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. Wasn't anything close to joy or amusement. It was all teeth and sharp edges and something wild and unhinged and utterly unafraid. You want me? She said softly, her voice carrying despite its quietness. You really want me? Then come get me, Alpha. Let's see if I'm as easy to break as you think. The silver light exploded outward from her body. It erupted from her skin in a wave of pure power that hit Kael Draven's wolves like a physical force, like a shockwave from a detonation. The betas stumbled backward, crying out in pain and surprise, throwing up their arms to shield their eyes from the sudden brightness that was like staring into the sun. Sable hissed, her sword clattering to the frozen ground as she fell to her knees, hands pressed against her face. Even Kael Draven staggered, though he stayed upright through sheer force of will, his arm raised to block the worst of the light, squinting against the brilliance. What the hell? What are you? Vyra felt the power flowing through her veins like molten silver, hot and wild and completely beyond her conscious control. It filled every cell, every fiber, making her skin glow bright enough to cast harsh shadows, bright enough to light up the entire canyon like midday sun had suddenly appeared in this frozen wasteland. Her hair lifted in an invisible wind, her eyes blazed with silver fire, and then she ran. Not away from them, past them. The silver light gave her speed she shouldn't have possessed, strength her fragile Omega body had never known. She covered the distance to the tree line in seconds that felt like heartbeats, her bare feet barely touching the snow, leaving glowing footprints that faded slowly behind her. Behind her, she heard Cale Draven shouting orders, heard his wolves scrambling to recover, heard the sound of weapons being retrieved. After her, don't let her escape. Sable, flank left. You two cut through the ravine. I'll take point. Move. Vyra plunged into the forest, branches whipping at her face and arms, tearing her dress further, scratching her skin. The light was fading now, sinking back beneath her skin like a tide receding, leaving her gasping and shaking and terrified because she didn't know how she'd done that, didn't know how to summon it again, didn't know if it would answer if she called. But it had worked. She'd bought herself time. Seconds, maybe. Not much. They were faster than her, stronger, trained hunters who'd tracked prey through every kind of terrain imaginable. But maybe it would be enough. Maybe a howl split the air behind her. Wolf song, deep and resonant and absolutely terrifying in its primal power. Cale Draven had shifted. Vyra's blood turned to ice water in her veins. She'd never seen him in his wolf form, but she'd heard the stories. Whispered in the Omega quarters late at night. Tales of a black wolf the size of a small horse. Faster than thought itself. Stronger than death. Jaws that could crush stone. Claws that could tear through steel. The Alpha Supreme in his true form. And he was hunting her. She ran harder, lungs burning with each frozen breath, legs screaming in protest. Her body pushed far beyond what should have been possible. The forest blurred around her. She had no idea where she was going, no plan beyond putting as much distance between herself and them as humanly possible. Another howl, closer this time, much, much closer. Vyra risked a glance back over her shoulder and immediately wished she hadn't. A black wolf the size of a small horse was tearing through the underbrush behind her, moving with impossible speed and grace despite its massive size. Easily 3 times larger than a normal wolf, maybe 4. Gold eyes locked onto her with absolute predatory focus, muscles rippling beneath midnight fur with each bound, jaws that could snap her spine like a dry twig. Cale Draven. He was gaining, fast, impossibly fast. Vyra pushed herself harder, desperation giving her speed she didn't know she had, adrenaline flooding her system. The silver light flickered inside her, weak and uncertain, exhausted from the earlier display. She tried to call it forth again, tried to make it respond the way it had before, tried to summon that power. Nothing happened. Just a faint warmth. Not enough. The black wolf was 20 yards behind her. 15. 10. She could hear his breathing now. Feel the vibrations of his paws hitting the ground. 5 yards. Vyra burst out of the tree line without warning and found herself at the edge of a cliff. The ground simply ended, dropping away into a ravine that seemed bottomless, at least 100 feet deep, maybe more. Rocks and ice and darkness below. No way across. No way down without falling to certain death. Dead end. Trap. She spun around, gasping, desperate. Cale Draven emerged from the trees in his massive wolf form, moving with eerie silence despite his size. Each step deliberate and controlled now that he had her cornered. He stopped at the tree line 10 feet away, blocking her only escape route. His pack emerged behind him seconds later, Sable and the 2 betas, all breathing hard from the chase, all watching with predatory intensity. They stared at each other. Vyra's back was to the cliff, wind tearing at her hair and dress, threatening to pull her over the edge with each violent gust. Cale Draven stood between her and freedom, utterly still except for the slight heaving of his massive chest, just watching her with those gold eyes that saw everything. "Shift back," Vyra said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Please, if you're going to do this, if you're going to force me, at least have the decency to look me in the eye as a man when you do it." The black wolf's form shimmered and blurred, bones cracked and reformed with sounds like gunshots. Fur receded into skin, muscles shifted and reorganized. The transformation was fluid and fast, practiced over decades. In seconds, Cale Draven stood before her in human form, completely naked and utterly unbothered by it, by the cold, by anything. His skin was flushed from the shift and the chase, chest heaving slightly, muscles defined and powerful. His eyes were still more wolf than human, pupils blown wide, gold overwhelming the white predator instincts still riding high. "I'm not going to kill you," he said, his voice rough from the shift. "I told you, I need you alive, need you whole. This doesn't end with your death." "Then what?" Vyra demanded, her voice rising to be heard over the wind. "You drag me back in chains, lock me up in that cell until the elders figure out how to break the bond, and then what happens? You exile me again? Kill me to make sure I can't tell anyone what you did, what you're capable of?" Draven's jaw clenched. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Alpha Supreme. Make me understand why I should trust a single word that comes out of your mouth ever again after what you did." "You don't have to trust me," Draven said, taking a step forward, his bare feet crunching in the snow. "You just have to obey. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. I'm the Alpha. You're the Omega. I give orders. You follow them. It's the natural hierarchy. It's simple." "Nothing about this is simple," Vyra shot back. "It could be. If you just submit." Vyra laughed, the sound edged with hysteria and rage. "Bow down? Accept my place at the bottom? Roll over and show my belly? That's what you want, isn't it? For me to be a good little Omega and do what I'm told without question, without thought, without any consideration for what I want or need or feel. It would make this easier for both of us. For you, maybe." Draven took another step forward, then another, closing the distance between them with predatory patience, with the absolute confidence of someone who knew they held all the power. Vyra had nowhere to go. The cliff was at her back, 100-foot drop to certain death. One wrong step, one loss of balance, and she'd fall. "Don't," she warned, holding up one hand. "Don't come any closer." "Or what?" Draven asked, his voice dropping to something almost gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it infinitely worse, made it feel like mockery. "You'll jump? Throw yourself off the cliff to avoid coming back with me? That's not bravery, Vyra. That's not strength or courage or any of the things you think it is. That's just stupidity. That's giving up. And I don't think you're ready to give up yet. I can see it in your eyes. You want to survive this. You want to live. So stop being difficult and just come with me. Let me help you." "Help me?" Vyra's voice cracked. "You want to help me? Where was this help a week ago? Where was this concern when you were rejecting me in front of everyone? Where was this mercy when you had your guards drag me through the pack house in chains while people spat on me?" "I did what I had to do." "You did what was easiest. What made you look strong? What protected your reputation at the cost of everything I was? You're under my protection now. That's what matters." "I don't want your protection," the words tore out of her throat. "Too bad." Draven's composure finally cracked completely, rage bleeding through like blood through cloth. "You don't get a choice. The bond is killing me. My wolf is tearing itself apart inside me, trying to get to you, trying to fix what I broke, trying to complete what should have been finished during the ceremony, and I can't control it anymore. Every day it gets worse. I can't sleep without dreaming about you dying out here alone. I can't eat without tasting your fear on the air. I can't think about anything except finding you, protecting you, keeping you safe, even though I—" He cut himself off abruptly, breathing hard, fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Vyra stared at him, her own anger momentarily suspended by shock. "Even though you what? Even though you hate me? Even though you think I'm worthless? Even though I'm beneath you? Even though looking at me disgusts you? Even though I don't want to feel this way?" Draven roared, and the sound echoed across the canyon like thunder. "I don't want this bond. I don't want you. I don't want to care whether you live or die. But I'm stuck with it anyway, and so are you, and the only way to fix it, the only way either of us gets free, is for you to come back and let the elders try to break it properly. So stop being so goddamn stubborn and just no." The word fell between them like an executioner's blade. Draven's eyes widened slightly, like he genuinely couldn't believe she was still refusing, still resisting, still fighting when any rational Omega would have submitted 10 minutes ago. "No?" he repeated slowly, dangerously. "No." Vyra said again, stronger this time, her voice carrying absolute conviction. I'm done. I'm done being your problem to solve. I'm done being something you have to fix or deal with or manage. You want me? You really think you can just take me? Then you're going to have to take me. And I promise you, Alpha. The silver light flickered in her eyes again, reflecting in his gold ones. It won't be as easy as you think. It won't be clean, and I will make you regret every second of it. Kale Draven's expression shifted, hardened into something cold and final. So be it, he said, and he lunged. Vyra threw herself sideways, but she was too slow, her human reflexes no match for Alpha speed. His hand caught her wrist before she could dodge, fingers wrapping around it like an iron manacle, crushing, inescapable. She cried out, tried to pull free, tried to twist away, but his grip was absolute. Let go of me! Stop fighting! I said let go! The silver light exploded again without conscious thought, but this time it was different, focused, weaponized. It shot from her chest in a concentrated beam directly into the point where his skin touched hers, where flesh met flesh, where the unwanted bond tried to reform. Kale Draven jerked back with a shout of genuine pain, releasing her instantly. He stared at his hand in shock and disbelief. The palm was burned, seared, a perfect handprint branded into his flesh, the skin already blistering and turning black at the edges, the kind of burn that should have come from prolonged contact with red-hot metal, from touching her. They both stared at it, then at each other. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind and Kale Draven's heavy breathing. "What are you?" Kale Draven breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "What the hell are you becoming?" Vyra didn't answer, couldn't answer, because she had absolutely no idea. Behind Kale Draven, Sable and the Betas burst fully into the clearing, weapons drawn and ready, having finally caught up. They took in the scene instantly, their Alpha's burned hand, Vyra backed against the cliff glowing faintly with silver light, the tension thick enough to cut. "Alpha!" Sable's eyes were wide with shock. "What happened? What did she—" "Stay back!" Kale Draven ordered sharply, not taking his eyes off Vyra for even a second. "All of you. Nobody touches her. Nobody approaches. Do you understand? That's an order." "But, Alpha, your hand. I said stay back." Sable froze mid-step, confusion and genuine concern warring on her normally impassive face. The Betas exchanged uncertain glances but held their positions. Kale Draven stepped forward again, more cautiously this time, moving like someone approaching a dangerous animal they didn't fully understand. "Vyra," he said, his voice carefully controlled now, measuring each word. "I don't know what's happening to you, what you encountered out here, what changed you, what that power is. But that—" He gestured at his burned hand without looking at it. "That's not normal. That's not Omega. That's not anything I've ever seen or heard of in my entire life. You need help. Training. Someone who can teach you to control it before you hurt yourself or someone else or cause damage you can't take back. Come back with me. Let the elders examine you. Let them help you understand what this is. We can figure this out together as—" He hesitated. "As allies, if not as mates." "Together," Vyra repeated flatly, her voice empty. "Like we're partners. Like we're equals. Like you see me as anything other than a problem to be solved. Like we're both trying to survive a situation neither of us wanted or asked for." Vyra looked at him, really looked, studied his face, his posture, the way he held himself. Saw the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, the tightness around his mouth that spoke of constant pain, the way he was unconsciously favoring his burned hand. He was telling the truth about the bond affecting him. She could see it clearly now. The toll it was taking, the way it was slowly destroying him from the inside out. Part of her, a small, traitorous, incredibly stupid part, wanted to feel bad for him, wanted to help, wanted to believe his words about figuring it out together. But the rest of her remembered his face when he rejected her, disgust twisting his features, remembered the laughter of 500 wolves watching her humiliation, remembered freezing alone in the snow, waiting to die, certain she'd been forgotten, remembered every moment of suffering he'd caused, and felt nothing but cold certainty. "No," she said one final time, her voice absolutely steady. "I will never help you. I will never trust you, and I will never, ever come back to that pack. You want to sever the bond? Figure it out yourself. You want me? You'll have to kill me, because I'm done. I'm done with you, with them, with all of it. She took a step backward, closer to the edge. Kale Draven's eyes widened in sudden understanding and horror. Vyra, wait, don't! Goodbye, Alpha Supreme. And then she jumped, threw herself backward off the cliff with absolute commitment, with no hesitation, with complete certainty that death was better than going back. Kale Draven's shout of horror followed her over the edge, raw and desperate and almost human. Vyra! No! The wind tore the sound away as she fell, plummeting toward the rocks below, the ravine opening beneath her like the mouth of some ancient beast ready to swallow her whole and never let go. She'd rather die than submit, rather fall than bend, rather break herself than let him break her again. The silver light erupted from her skin one final time, brighter than ever before, bright enough to blind, bright enough to burn away shadow and doubt and fear. And the world went white as she fell into the abyss, weightless and free, and utterly beyond his reach. Falling felt like flying. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, Vyra experienced something close to peace. The wind screamed past her ears, tearing at her hair and dress, but inside the cocoon of silver light that had exploded from her skin, everything was quiet, weightless, free. Then the light did something impossible. It hardened, solidified around her like crystal, like armor, forming wings, actual wings, that spread from her shoulder blades in a burst of power that stole her breath. Not feathered, not membrane. Pure condensed light shaped into something functional, something real, something that caught the air and stopped her descent with a jolt that should have snapped her spine. Vyra hung suspended 50 feet above the ravine floor, silver wings beating slowly, keeping her aloft. She stared down at the jagged rocks below that should have been her grave. Then up at the cliff edge where Kale Draven stood frozen, his face a mask of absolute shock. Their eyes met across the distance, and something passed between them. Recognition. Horror. Understanding that whatever she was becoming, it was far beyond anything either of them had imagined. Vyra didn't wait to see his reaction. The wings beat once, hard, and she shot forward into the ravine, disappearing into the maze of rock and shadow before he could recover enough to shift and follow. She flew. Actually, flew. The silver wings responded to her thoughts, banking around stone pillars, diving beneath natural bridges, climbing thermal currents with instinctive grace. She had no idea how she knew what to do, how to control them, how to stay airborne. The knowledge simply existed, downloaded directly into her muscle memory by whatever force was reshaping her. Behind her, she heard Kale Draven's howl of rage and frustration echoing through the canyon, but he couldn't follow, couldn't reach her. For the first time in her entire life, Vyra was faster, stronger, free. The ravine eventually widened into a valley she didn't recognize, densely forested and completely unmarked on any map she'd ever seen. The wastes were vast, largely unexplored except by rogues and the desperate. This looked different, older. The trees were massive, ancient things with bark like dragon scales and branches that reached toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. The silver wings flickered and faded as exhaustion hit her like a hammer. Vyra dropped the last 10 feet, hitting snow-covered ground hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. She lay there gasping, her body shaking with aftershocks from whatever she'd just done. The wings were gone completely now, retracted back into her skin. Or her soul, she couldn't tell which. Everything hurt, but she was alive. And alone. Finally, blessedly alone. Vyra pushed herself up slowly, taking stock. No broken bones, no major injuries, just exhaustion so profound it made her bones feel like lead. She needed shelter, water, food, though her body seemed to need less of it now than before. Rest. Movement in the trees made her freeze, not Kale Draven. The scent was wrong, softer, female, multiple signatures. 3 women emerged from the forest, moving with the fluid grace of experienced hunters. They were dressed in practical leather and fur, weapons visible but not drawn. The one in the center was older, maybe 50, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes like flint. The 2 flanking her were younger, harder, carrying themselves like soldiers. They stopped 20 feet away, studying Vyra with expressions she couldn't read. "You fell," the older woman said. Her voice was rough, accented with something Vyra didn't recognize. "We saw the light." Thought maybe the old stories were true after all. Vyra's throat was too dry to speak. She managed a nod. Can you walk? Another nod. Good, because standing out here exposed is stupid, and I don't shelter stupid people. Come, we'll talk somewhere warm. The woman turned and walked back into the forest without waiting to see if Vyra would follow. Vyra hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, then followed. What choice did she have? The shelter turned out to be a cave system hidden behind a waterfall that had partially frozen, creating a curtain of ice. Inside, the temperature was noticeably warmer, heated by thermal vents that sent steam curling through the air. At least a dozen women lived here, Vyra realized. All of them looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity as she was led deeper into the caves. The older woman gestured to a pile of furs near one of the vents. Sit, before you fall over. Vyra sat. One of the younger women brought her water in a carved wooden cup. Vyra drank it in 3 desperate gulps, then accepted a second cup more slowly. I'm Kira, the older woman said, lowering herself onto a rock across from Vyra with the careful movements of someone whose joints ached. This is my pack, or what's left of it. We're all exiles here, rejected omegas mostly. Few betas who chose exile over submission. We survive because we're careful, and because the wastes hide us well. Vyra, she managed, her voice still rough. I know who you are, Kira said quietly. Word travels, even out here. The Omega rejected by the Alpha Supreme himself. Humiliated publicly, exiled to die. Except her eyes narrowed. You didn't die. And that light we saw, those wings, that's not normal Omega biology. So what are you really, girl? What's happening to you? I don't know, Vyra said honestly. It started after the rejection, after my wolf went silent. Something else woke up inside me, something that keeps me alive, makes me stronger, gives me power I don't understand. Kira exchanged glances with the other women. Something unspoken passed between them. The elders have legends, Kira said slowly. Stories they don't tell the young ones anymore, about the first wolves. The originals who were more than just human and animal combined. They say the first Omegas weren't weak at all. They were vessels, carriers of something ancient and powerful that balanced the Alpha's dominance with their own form of strength. But over generations, it was bred out, suppressed, lost, until all that remained were fragile Omegas like you and me, serving the Alphas without question. Vyra's heart hammered. You think that's what this is? Something ancestral? I think, Kira said carefully, that the bond breaking might have unlocked something that was always there, something sealed, waiting. Before Vyra could respond, one of the younger women, a scarred beta named Thora, burst into the chamber, breathing hard. Kira, we have a problem. There's an alpha at the perimeter. Big one. Black Wolf. He's not alone. He's demanding we send out anyone we're sheltering. Says he'll burn the forest if we don't comply. Vyra's stomach dropped. Kyle Draven. You brought him here? Kira's voice went cold, deadly. I didn't know about this place. I was running blind. Kira stood, her face hardening. Thora, gather the others. Combat positions. If he wants a fight... Wait. Vyra stood too, swaying slightly. This is my fault. I'll go. I'll face him. You don't have to... Sit down, child, Kira snapped. You can barely stand, and I don't hand over wolves to alphas who exile their mates. We're not that pack. We don't bend. Not anymore. Outside the cave, Kale Draven's voice echoed, amplified by Alpha Command. Vyra Duskalo! I know you're in there. Come out now, or I start killing everyone who's hiding you. You have 60 seconds. Vyra's hands clenched into fists. He'll do it. He'll actually do it. Let him try, Kira said grimly. No. Vyra pushed past her, ignoring the protests, ignoring her body's screaming demand for rest. No more people die because of me. No more. She stumbled toward the cave entrance, emerging into the gray afternoon light. Kale Draven stood in the clearing beyond the frozen waterfall, still in human form, flanked by Sable and at least a dozen armed wolves. His eyes locked onto her immediately. There you are, he said, his voice carrying easily across the distance. Done running? Done putting other people in danger for my problems, Vyra shot back. You want to talk? Fine, we talk. But you send your pack back first. This is between us. Kale Draven's eyes narrowed. I'm not that stupid. Neither am I, but I'm also not going to let you slaughter innocent women because you can't handle rejection. Something flickered across his face. Anger, frustration, something else she couldn't name. Fine, he said after a long moment. Sable, take the others back 100 yards. Wait there. Alpha, I don't think that's an order. Sable's jaw clenched, but she obeyed, leading the wolves back into the forest until they disappeared from sight. Kale Draven and Vyra faced each other alone. You can fly now, he said flatly. Want to explain that? Can't. Don't understand it myself. Try. Why? So you can figure out how to use it? How to exploit it? I'm not your resource to mine, Kale Draven. His expression hardened. I tracked you for 3 days, through terrain that would kill most wolves, because the bond is getting worse, not better, because my wolf is ripping itself apart, because... He stopped, jaw working. Because what? Because you're dying, he said, the words coming out harsh and unwilling. The bond damage. It's not just affecting me. It's killing you too, slowly. The silver light, the power, all of it. It's burning through your life force faster than your body can sustain. The elders confirmed it. You have maybe 3 weeks before it consumes you completely. A month at most. Vyra stared at him. You're lying. I'm not. Why do you think I've been so desperate to get you back? It's not just for me. If we don't fix this, we both die. Just on different timelines. The words hit her like a physical blow. No. You're making this up to manipulate me, to get me to... Look at yourself, Vyra, Kale Draven shouted. Actually, look. You're thinner than you were a week ago despite the power boost. Your hands are shaking. Your eyes have dark circles that weren't there before. The light is beautiful, yes, but it's eating you alive from the inside out. It's a parasite wearing the skin of a gift. Vyra looked down at her hands. They were shaking and thinner. She could see bones she'd never been able to see before. The elders think the rejection broke the bond incorrectly, Kale Draven continued, his voice slightly gentler now. Instead of severing cleanly, it shattered into fragments that are embedded in both of us. Constantly cutting, constantly bleeding energy. The power you're experiencing is your soul desperately trying to compensate for the damage. But it can't sustain it. You'll burn out. And when you do, I'll die, Vyra finished numbly. Yes. Silence stretched between them. Why should I believe you? Vyra asked finally. You've done nothing but lie to me, destroy me, use me. Why should I trust anything you say? Because I brought proof, Kale Draven said quietly. He reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. Unwrapped it carefully. It was a mirror. Small, ornate, old. He held it up. Look at yourself. Really look. And tell me I'm lying. Vyra stepped forward hesitantly, then stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see her reflection in the polished surface, and froze. The face looking back at her was gaunt, hollowed out. Her cheekbones stood out in sharp relief. Her eyes were ringed with shadows so dark they looked like bruises. Her skin had taken on a translucent quality that made the silver light beneath it more visible, but also made her look less solid, less real, less alive. She looked like she was fading, becoming a ghost. No, she whispered. No, this isn't. I feel fine. I feel stronger than ever. That's the power lying to you, Kale Draven said, masking the damage, making you feel invincible while it drains your life. Vyra's knees buckled. She caught herself against a tree, breathing hard, panic clawing at her throat. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely audible. The elders figured it out 4 days ago. I've been searching for you ever since. To save yourself. To save both of us, Kale Draven corrected, because apparently our fates are still linked whether we like it or not. Vyra looked up at him, searching his face for deception, for manipulation, for any sign he was playing her. She found only exhaustion and what looked like genuine concern. What do I have to do? She asked finally. Relief flooded Kale Draven's features. Come back. Let the elders work. They think they can repair the bond properly this time. Not complete it necessarily, but repair the damage enough that we're not both dying. We'll still be able to separate eventually, but cleanly, without killing each other in the process. And I'm supposed to just trust you? Trust the same elders who performed the ceremony wrong the first time. You're supposed to trust that I don't want to die either, that we have aligned interests for once. Vyra closed her eyes, tried to think through the panic, the fear, the bone-deep exhaustion that was suddenly very obvious now that she was paying attention to it. I need guarantees, she said finally. I need your word, your alpha word, binding, that you won't exile me again, that you won't humiliate me, that once we're both stable, I'm free to leave and you won't stop me. Done, Kael Draven said immediately. You have my word as Alpha Supreme, bound by pack law and honor. You help fix this and you walk away free. No chains, no exile, no retribution. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But what choice did she have? Die out here alone in 3 weeks? Or take the chance that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth? Okay, Vyra said quietly. I'll come back. But the second you break your word, I won't. You better not, because the next time I jump off a cliff, I won't stop falling. Something that might have been respect flickered in Kael Draven's eyes. Fair enough. Can you walk, or do you need... I can walk. They made the journey back in tense silence, Kael Draven's pack maintaining careful distance. Kira and her exiles watched from the tree line, and Vyra caught the older woman's eye long enough to nod, a silent thank you, a promise she wouldn't forget the shelter offered. The pack house looked exactly as Vyra remembered it when they arrived 3 days later. Imposing, cold, full of wolves who stared at her with varying degrees of shock and contempt as Kael Draven led her through the halls. But this time, she walked in chains that were ceremonial rather than punitive. And this time, Kael Draven stayed beside her, his presence a clear message. She was under his protection, for whatever that was worth. The Elder Council waited in a chamber deep beneath the pack house. 5 ancient wolves, 3 men and 2 women, seated around a circular table carved with runes Vyra didn't recognize. Elder Rothic, the one who'd performed the original ceremony, looked up as they entered. You found her, he said, relief evident in his voice. Good. We don't have much time. You said you could fix this, Kael Draven said without preamble. Were you lying? We believe we can repair the worst of the damage, Rothic replied carefully. But it requires a secondary ritual, more complex than the first. And, he hesitated, it requires complete honesty from both parties. The bond fragments are held in place by deception, by things unsaid. We have to clear the air completely before we can heal the wounds. What does that mean? Vyra asked. It means, one of the female elders said quietly, that you both have to confess your deepest truths about the bond, about each other, about what you really want. No lies, no shields, complete emotional transparency while we work. Vyra's stomach dropped. You want us to what? It's the only way, Rothic said firmly. The bond can't heal while you're both hiding, pretending, lying to yourselves and each other. Kael Draven's jaw clenched. And if we refuse, then you both die within the month. Possibly sooner. Silence fell over the chamber like a shroud. When? Vyra asked finally. Now, Rothic said. Before either of you loses your nerve, step into the circle. A ritual circle had been drawn on the floor in the center of the chamber, marked with symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Vyra and Kael Draven approached it from opposite sides, stopping at the edge. Kneel facing each other, Rothic instructed. They knelt. The elders began to chant, low and rhythmic, in a language Vyra didn't recognize. The symbols on the floor brightened, and she felt something shift in the air, pressure building. Magic, real magic, not the superstition she'd always half believed, gathering around them like a storm. Kael Draven Thorn, Rothic's voice cut through the chanting. Speak your truth. Why did you really reject her? Kael Draven's hands clenched on his thighs. I told you. She was weak, unsuitable. The symbols flared angry red. Pain lanced through both of them, sharp and immediate. Truth, Rothic said sharply, or the ritual fails, and you both die right here. Kael Draven's jaw worked. Then slowly, words began to emerge. Because I was afraid, he said, each word dragged out like pulling teeth, because the bond was stronger than anything I'd ever felt, and it terrified me, because looking at her made me feel things I didn't want to feel, made me weak, vulnerable, and I couldn't afford to be weak, not as Alpha Supreme. So I destroyed it before it could destroy me. The symbols turned blue, accepting the truth. Vyra stared at him, shock rendering her speechless. Vyra Duskalo, Rothic turned to her. Speak your truth. What do you really want from him? Nothing, Vyra said immediately. I want nothing from him. I want red flare, pain. She gasped, doubling over. Truth, child. Vyra's eyes burned with unshed tears. The words clawed their way up her throat against her will, dragged out by magic and necessity. I want him to see me, she whispered. Really see me. Not as weak or broken or worthless. I want him to regret what he did. I want him to hurt the way he made me hurt. And her voice cracked. I hate that part of me still wants him to want me. Still wants the bond to be real. Even after everything, I hate myself for that weakness. Blue light, truth accepted. The chanting intensified. Deeper, Rothic commanded. There's more, both of you. What are you still hiding? Kael'draven's eyes met Vyra's across the circle, and she saw something in them she'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. The bond isn't breaking because I don't want it to, he said, the words barely audible. My wolf refuses. Because it knows, it's always known, that she's perfect. That the pairing wasn't wrong. I'm the one who's wrong. I'm the one who's broken. And I destroyed the best thing that could have happened to me because I'm too much of a coward to accept something good. The chamber went completely silent except for the sound of Vyra's sharp inhale. Vyra, Rothic prompted gently. I felt the bond too, she whispered, tears finally spilling over. During the ceremony, it was there, real and strong and perfect. And when he rejected me, when he said I was nothing, I believed him. I've always believed I was nothing, that I deserved to be thrown away. And part of me jumped off that cliff not to escape him, but because I wanted to prove him right. Wanted to finish what he started. Wanted to be the worthless thing he said I was. The symbols exploded with light so bright Vyra had to close her eyes. She felt something shift inside her chest. The bond fragments, she could actually feel them now. Jagged pieces embedded in her soul began to move, to realign. It hurt. God, it hurt worse than the rejection had, worse than anything she'd ever experienced. Kael'draven screamed. So did she. The elders' chanting reached a crescendo, and then silence. The light faded. Vyra opened her eyes, gasping. The pain was gone. The hollow emptiness in her chest was still there, but different. Not empty anymore. Filled with something warm, something alive. The bond. Whole. Complete. Stronger than before. She looked at Kael'draven in horror. His eyes reflected the same horror back at her. What did you do? He breathed, staring at the elders. What the hell did you do? Rothic's expression was calm. Too calm. We repaired the bond, just as we said we would. You completed it, Kael'draven snarled, surging to his feet. We didn't want it completed. We wanted it severed. That was never possible, Rothic said quietly. The bond was always meant to be permanent. The rejection damaged it, yes, but the connection was too strong to ever truly break. We told you we would repair it. We never said we would remove it. Vyra felt ice flood her veins. You lied. You tricked us. We saved your lives, one of the other elders said firmly. In another week, you both would have been dead. The bond is stable now. The bleeding has stopped. You'll both survive. As mates, Vyra said, her voice hollow. Forever bound to someone who doesn't want me. I never said I didn't want you, Kael'draven said quietly. She looked at him sharply. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, frustration, resignation, and underneath it all something that might have been relief. The truth comes out under magical compulsion, he said. Everything I said in the circle, that was real. I was afraid. I am afraid. But that doesn't change the fact that the bond is right. My wolf knows it, and apparently so do the elders. So what now? Vyra demanded. You just accept this? Accept me? Pretend the last 2 weeks didn't happen? No, Kael'draven said. We acknowledge what happened, we deal with it, and we figure out how to make this work because we don't have another choice. There's always a choice. Not anymore. The bond is complete, permanent. Trying to break it now would kill us both instantly, so we can spend the rest of our lives hating each other and making ourselves miserable, or we can try to build something from the ruins. Your call. Vyra stared at him, at the elders who'd manipulated them both, at the bond humming in her chest, warm and alive and absolutely inescapable, at her complete lack of options. She'd been trapped, again, just in a different way. I need time, she said finally. I need space to think, to process. I can't just accept this. Fair enough, Draven said. I'll have quarters prepared for you, separate from mine. You'll have full access to the pack house, the territory, whatever you need. No chains, no guards, just... He hesitated. Just don't run again, please. Because if you do, I'll have to follow, and we'll both end up worse off than before. It wasn't exactly freedom, but it wasn't a cage either. Okay, Vyra whispered. The elders began to file out, their work complete, leaving Vyra and Draven alone in the ritual chamber. The bond pulsed between them, warm and insistent, trying to pull them closer. Both of them resisted. I meant what I said in the circle, Draven said quietly, about being afraid, about you being perfect. I'm not good at this, at feelings, at vulnerability, at any of it, but I'm willing to try if you are. You destroyed me, Vyra said, her voice breaking. In front of everyone, you made me want to die. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that if you'll let me. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to prove I'm more than the worst thing I've ever done. Vyra looked at him for a long moment, at the man who'd broken her, who'd saved her, who was now bound to her forever whether either of them wanted it or not. One chance, she said finally. But if you ever make me feel that worthless again, bond or no bond, I'll find a way to make you regret it. Deal. They stood in awkward silence, neither quite sure what to do next, both hyper-aware of the bond singing between them, demanding acknowledgement, demanding... The door burst open. Sable stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with something that looked like terror. Alpha, she gasped. We have a problem. The southern border, there's an army, hundreds of wolves, led by... She stopped, swallowed hard. Led by your brother. He's declaring a challenge for your position, and he's brought proof that your bond makes you unfit to rule. He's demanding you step down, or he'll take the pack by force, and he's given you until dawn to decide. Draven went very still. My brother is dead, he said slowly. He died 5 years ago in the Scarlands campaign. Apparently not, Sable said grimly, because he's very much alive, and he's out there right now with an army, claiming you left him for dead, claiming you're weak, claiming the pack deserves better, and... She hesitated. Alpha. Half the pack is listening to him. Half of them think he's right. The color drained from Draven's face. Vyra felt the bond pulse with his shock, his fear, his sudden understanding that everything, the pack, his position, his entire world, was about to fall apart. And she was going to fall with him because they were bound now. Inescapably. Permanently. How long do we have? Draven asked, his voice deadly calm. 6 hours until dawn. Then he attacks whether you answer or not. Draven looked at Vyra. She looked back, and both of them understood simultaneously. They'd been played from the beginning by forces far more cunning than either had imagined, and now they had to fight together or die together. There was no third option. Not anymore. Get everyone ready, Draven said to Sable. Full combat positions. I'm not giving up my pack without a fight. And her? Sable gestured at Vyra. What do we do with, She stays with me, Draven said firmly. She's my mate, my Luna, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally after we survive the night. Vyra's eyes widened, but before she could protest, before she could argue, Draven took her hand, carefully, gently, asking permission with his eyes. The bond flared at the contact. And despite everything, despite the betrayal and the pain and the absolute insanity of the situation, Vyra found herself squeezing back. Because if they were going to die tonight, At least they wouldn't die alone. "Let's go meet your brother," she said quietly. Kale Draven's eyes held something that might have been gratitude, or might have been the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. They walked out of the chamber together, hand in hand, toward a battle neither of them was prepared for, bound by a fate neither had chosen, but both were going to have to fight to survive. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching, smiling, because everything was going exactly according to. The army waited at the southern border like a stain spreading across snow. Vyra stood beside Kale Draven on the observation tower, counting bodies in the pre-dawn darkness. Hundreds. Maybe more. All in formation, all armed, all waiting with the patience of wolves who knew their prey had nowhere to run. "That's not an army," she said quietly. "That's an execution squad." "That's my brother," Kale Draven replied, his voice empty, hollowed out. He always was thorough. The bond pulsed between them, carrying his fear, his rage, his absolute certainty that he was about to lose everything. Vyra felt it all, the emotions bleeding through the connection, whether she wanted them or not. "Tell me about him," she said. "The truth this time, not the official story." Kale Draven's jaw clenched. "His name is Draven. 3 years younger than me, stronger, faster, more ruthless. Everything an alpha should be except for one thing. He was never chosen as heir. My father picked me because I could think strategically, could lead beyond just brute force. Draven never forgave that, never forgave me." "You said he died in the Scarlands." "I thought he did. We were ambushed, rogues everywhere. Draven fell protecting my flank, took 3 of them with him before they dragged him down. I saw him go under, saw the blood. By the time we fought clear, his body was gone. I searched for 2 days, found nothing, so I—" His voice cracked. "I gave up, declared him dead, took his honor marks and brought them home to our father. But he wasn't dead." "Apparently not, and now he's back with an army and a grudge and proof that I abandoned him." Vyra looked down at the assembled pack in the courtyard below. Maybe 200 wolves, armed and ready, but their faces showed doubt, division, fear. "Half your pack thinks he's right," she said. "Sable said so. Why?" "Because he probably is," Kale Draven said bitterly. "I did leave him. I did give up. I did take his kills as my own and let everyone believe I was the hero while he rotted somewhere in the wastes. And now I'm mated to a rejected Omega. Everyone saw me humiliate publicly. To them, that looks like weakness, like I've lost control, lost the right to lead." "So what's the plan?" Kale Draven looked at her, something unreadable in his gold eyes. "The law is clear. When an alpha is challenged by blood, only one outcome is recognized, trial by combat. Winner takes the pack. Loser dies." Vyra's stomach dropped. "You're going to fight him." "I don't have a choice." "There's always a choice. Not this time." Kale Draven turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. The bond flared at the contact, warm and insistent. "Vyra, listen to me. When the sun rises, I'm going down there, and I'm probably going to die. Draven is better than me. He always was. But before I go, I need you to understand something." "Don't," Vyra said, her throat tight. "Don't do the farewell speech. Don't." "The elders manipulated us both," Kyle Draven continued, speaking over her. "But the bond is real. What I feel for you is real, and I'm sorry. For everything. For the rejection, the humiliation, the exile. For not being strong enough to accept something good when it was offered. You deserve better than me. You still do." Tears burned Vyra's eyes. "Then don't die. Fight harder. Win. If I don't—" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. "This grants you full autonomy, freedom from the pack, from any obligation to whoever takes over. You can go anywhere, do anything. You're not bound to my failures." "I'm bound to you," Vyra said, her voice breaking. "The bond doesn't end if you die. It'll kill me too. The elders said so." Kale Draven's face went white. "What?" "Complete the bond," they said. "It'll save your lives," they said. They didn't mention that severing it through death would destroy the surviving mate within hours. So if you die down there— She couldn't finish the sentence. The implications hung between them like a noose. "Then we both have a vested interest in me surviving," Kale Draven said finally. "Looks like—" A horn sounded from the southern border, long and mournful. The challenge formally issued. "It's time," Sable called from below. "Alpha, they're waiting." Kale squeezed Vyra's hands once more. "Stay here. Stay safe. Don't—" "I'm coming with you," Vyra said firmly. "Absolutely not. You're not trained for— I'm your mate. You're Luna. You said so yourself. Where you go, I go. That's how this works, right? Or were you lying about that too?" Kale stared at her. Then impossibly he smiled. Small and brief and utterly exhausted, but real. "You're insane. I learned from the best." They descended the tower together. The pack parted as they walked through the courtyard, wolves backing away, creating a corridor. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked uncertain. A few looked openly hostile. "She shouldn't be here," someone muttered. "Rejected Omega playing Luna. Embarrassment to the bloodline." Kale growl shut them all up. "Anyone who has a problem with my mate can challenge me after I deal with my brother. Form a line. I'll kill you all in order." Silence fell. They reached the southern gate. Beyond it, the army waited in perfect formation. And at its center, mounted on a massive gray wolf, sat a man who looked almost exactly like Kale Almost. Draven Thorn was broader, heavier with muscle. Scars covered his exposed arms and chest, telling stories of battles survived. His hair was longer, wilder, pulled back in a warrior's knot. His eyes were the same wolf gold as his brother's, but colder, harder. He smiled when he saw them. "Brother," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "You look well. Considering you left me for dead and stole my glory." "Draven!" Kale voice was carefully controlled. "I thought you were dead. I searched." "You searched for 2 days," Draven interrupted. 2 days. Then you gave up, declared me gone, and took credit for my kills. 43 rogues I put down protecting your worthless hide. 43. And you let everyone believe you did it alone. That's not, isn't it?" Draven dismounted in one fluid motion, landing in the snow with predatory grace. "You stood in front of the council and accepted honors that belonged to me. You took the supreme title that should have been mine. You let our father die believing I was the weak one who couldn't survive, all because you were too much of a coward to admit you'd failed." Kale flinched like he'd been struck. "So here's what's going to happen," Draven continued, stepping forward. "You and me, trial by combat. No weapons, no tricks, no interference. Just wolves and blood and the old laws. Winner takes the pack and the title. Loser dies knowing they got exactly what they deserved." "I accept," Kale said without hesitation. Draven's smile widened. "Good. I was hoping you'd have the spine for it. And afterward, when you're dead—" His eyes shifted to Vyra. "I'll deal with your little Omega problem. Can't have damaged goods representing this pack as Luna." Vyra felt the bond pulse with Kale rage. "Touch her," Kale said softly, "and I'll make your death last days." "You have to survive to make threats, brother." The elders emerged from the pack house, Rothic in the lead, carrying the ceremonial blade used to officiate challenges. His face was grim. "The challenge is witnessed," he intoned. "The terms are set. Kale Thorn, current Alpha Supreme, versus Draven Thorn, challenger by blood, combat to the death. The victor claims pack and title. Do both parties consent?" "Yes," both brothers said simultaneously. "Then at first light, let blood decide." The sun was beginning to rise, painting the snow red and gold. The army and the pack formed a massive circle, creating an arena 100 feet across. Vyra stood at the edge, Sable beside her, both women tense and ready despite knowing they couldn't interfere. "He's going to lose," Sable said quietly. "Draven is stronger, faster, more aggressive. Kale fights smart, but smart only gets you so far against someone who's simply better." "Then why are you here?" Vyra asked. "Because he's my alpha, and I don't abandon pack, even when they're about to die." The brothers stepped into the circle from opposite sides. Both began to strip, removing clothing until they stood bare and ready to shift. "Any last words?" Draven called out. "Yeah," Kale replied. "I'm sorry. For everything. For giving up on you. For taking what wasn't mine. You deserve better than what I gave you." Draven's expression flickered, surprise, maybe, or pain quickly masked. "Too late for apologies, brother. Way too late. They shifted. The transformation was simultaneous and brutal. Bones cracking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding, skin splitting to make way for fur. Kale Draven became the massive black wolf Vyra had seen before, powerful and deadly and absolutely focused. Draven became something even larger, a gray wolf with silver markings, easily 50 pounds heavier, built like a battering ram with teeth. They circled each other slowly, both looking for weakness, for opening, for the perfect moment to strike. Then Draven lunged. The impact was like thunder, two massive bodies colliding with enough force to shake the ground. Jaws snapped, claws raked, blood sprayed across white snow in crimson arcs. Kyle Draven dodged left, fast, using his smaller size to avoid the worst of Draven's charge. Came around and bit down on his brother's flank, teeth sinking deep. Draven roared and spun, catching Kale Draven across the face with claws that opened 3 parallel gashes. Kale Draven yelped and released, backing up, blood streaming from the wounds. They circled again. Draven feinted right, then attacked left, catching Kale Draven off guard. His jaws closed around Kale Draven's front leg, and Vyra heard bone crack. Kale Draven screamed, an awful, too human sound from a wolf throat. The bond exploded with his pain, and Vyra gasped, doubling over as phantom agony lanced through her own leg. "Steady," Sable hissed, gripping her arm. "You can't interfere. It's law." "He's going to kill him," Vyra managed through gritted teeth. Yes, probably. Kale Draven was limping now, favoring the damaged leg, moving slower. Draven pressed the advantage, attacking relentlessly, giving no quarter. Teeth and claws and overwhelming force. Another strike opened Kyle Draven's shoulder. Another tore his ear half off. Blood everywhere. Too much blood. Kale Draven was losing, dying, and the bond was making Vyra feel every second of it. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." But neither brother stopped. Draven drove forward, backing Kale Draven toward the edge of the circle. One more good hit would end it, would give Draven the opening he needed to tear out his brother's throat and claim victory. He lunged for the kill. Kale Draven twisted at the last second, impossibly fast despite his injuries, and Draven's jaws closed on empty air. Kale Draven's teeth found his brother's throat in the same motion, biting down hard. Not killing, just holding, establishing dominance, proving he could end it if he wanted. The entire circle went silent. Draven froze, trapped, unable to break free without opening his own throat. For 5 heartbeats they stood locked together, predator and predator, brother and brother, past and present colliding in a moment that could go either way. Then Kyle Draven released him, stepped back, and shifted to human form, bloody and broken and barely able to stand. "I won't kill you," he said, his voice rough and damaged. "I should have died in the Scarlands with you. Should have kept looking until I found your body or proof of death. I failed you then. I failed you for years after, but I won't compound that failure by killing my own brother for the crime of wanting justice." Draven shifted back to human as well, his face a mask of confusion and rage. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Finish it. Kill me or I'll kill you. That's the law." "The law is broken," Kale Draven said. "It's been broken for generations. We kill each other over titles and honor and pride. And for what? So the strongest can lead? Strength without wisdom is just violence. I learned that the hard way when I rejected my mate in front of everyone because I was too proud to admit I felt something. I won't make the same mistake twice." "So what? You're just giving up? Conceding? I'm offering an alternative." Kale Draven straightened despite the pain, despite the blood streaming from a dozen wounds. "You want to lead? Fine. Take it. The pack is yours. The title is yours. I'll step down voluntarily. No more fighting, no more blood, just—" His voice cracked. "Just let me take my mate and go. Let us leave in peace. That's all I'm asking." Shock rippled through the assembled wolves. Draven stared at his brother like he'd grown a second head. "You'd give up everything? Your pack? Your position? Your legacy? For her?" He pointed at Vyra with disgust. "For a rejected Omega you publicly humiliated?" "Yes," Kale Draven said simply, "because she's my mate. My real mate. Not just the one the ceremony gave me. She's proven more courage in the last 2 weeks than I've shown in my entire life. And if keeping her safe means walking away from all of this, then that's what I'll do. Vyra's breath caught. The bond pulsed with the absolute truth of his words. He meant it. He was actually willing to give up everything for her. You're pathetic, Draven spat. Weak. Exactly like I always said. You don't deserve to lead. You never did. You're right, Kael Draven agreed. I don't. So take it. Lead them. Make them strong. Just let us go. Draven looked at him for a long moment, then at Vyra, then at the pack assembled around them, waiting for his decision. No, he said finally. Kael Draven's face fell. Draven, you don't get to walk away, Draven continued, his voice rising. You don't get peace and happiness and a quiet life with your mate after what you did to me. You left me to die, brother. Left me in a hole full of rogue corpses for 6 months while they kept me alive to torture. 6 months of hell because you gave up on me. And now you want to give up on this too? No. You're going to stay. You're going to lead. You're going to face every day knowing you failed me, knowing you don't deserve what you have. That's your punishment. That doesn't make sense. I challenge you to lead properly, Draven said, his voice taking on the formal cadence of pack law. To stop hiding behind pride and fear, to actually be the alpha our father believed you could be. That's my challenge, not for your title, for your spine. Prove you can be better than the coward who left me behind, or step down and let someone worthy take over. The pack erupted in murmurs, confusion spreading like wildfire. That's not how challenges work, Elder Rothick sputtered. Then change the law, Draven shot back, because I'm tired of watching alphas kill each other over pride. I came here for justice, not a title I don't even want. I came to make him face what he did, and now he has. So either he becomes worthy of leadership, or he doesn't. That's his choice. He turned and walked toward his army without another word. Wait, Kael Draven called out. Draven, wait, where are you going? Back to the wastes, Draven replied without turning. Back to the wolves I've been leading for the last 3 years. The exiles, the forgotten, the ones left behind by alphas like you, they need me more than this pack does. But I'll be watching, brother, and if you fail them, he stopped at the edge of the circle. If you fail them the way you failed me, I'll come back. And next time, I won't be so generous. He shifted and ran, his army following without hesitation, melting into the forest like smoke. Silence fell over the packhouse grounds. Every eye turned to Kael Draven, standing bloody and broken in the center of the circle, his offer of abdication hanging unanswered in the air. Well, Sable called out. What's it gonna be, Alpha? You stepping down or staying? Kael Draven looked at Vyra across the distance. She looked back, the bond singing between them, carrying a question neither had words for. What do we do now? Vyra took a breath, then stepped into the circle, walking toward him despite the gasps and protests from the watching pack. She stopped in front of him, close enough to feel his labored breathing, to smell the blood and pain and exhaustion rolling off him in waves. You offered to give it all up for me, she said quietly. Why? Because you're worth more than a title, Kael Draven replied. More than a pack. More than any of this. And if I asked you to stay? To lead? To be the alpha your brother thinks you can be? Then I'd stay, if you stayed with me. Vyra reached up and cupped his face with both hands, ignoring the blood, ignoring the watching wolves, ignoring everything except the man in front of her and the bond humming between them. Then lead, she said firmly. Be better. Be the alpha who doesn't exile omegas for being weak. Be the alpha who admits when he's wrong. Be the alpha who proves your brother right about you. I don't know if I can. You don't have to know. You just have to try. And I'll be here, helping, fighting, whatever it takes. Kael Draven's eyes searched hers. You'd really stay? After everything I put you through? I'd really stay. On one condition. Anything. You stand before this pack right now and apologize, publicly, for what you did to me, for the humiliation, the exile, all of it. You own your mistakes in front of everyone the way you made me suffer in front of everyone. That's the price. Kael Draven didn't hesitate. He turned to face the assembled pack, raised his voice despite the pain it clearly cost him. I owe you all an explanation, he began. And more importantly, I owe Vyra Duskalo, my mate, my Luna, an apology. 3 weeks ago, I rejected her publicly during the blood moon ceremony. I humiliated her in front of 500 witnesses. I called her weak, worthless, a genetic failure. I had her dragged through this pack house in chains and exiled her to the waste to die alone and forgotten. The pack shifted uncomfortably. Several wolves wouldn't meet his eyes. I did this because I was afraid, Draven continued. Afraid of the bond. Afraid of vulnerability. Afraid of admitting I felt something for someone I'd been taught to see as lesser. And in my fear, I became the worst version of what an alpha can be. Cruel, prideful, and cowardly. I broke someone who deserved protection. I failed my most basic duty as a leader, and I nearly destroyed the best thing that could have happened to me and this pack. He turned to Vyra, and the bond pulsed with the raw honesty of his words. Vyra, you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved respect, kindness, and acceptance. Instead, I gave you pain and shame and a death sentence. I cannot undo what I did. I cannot take back the words I said or the suffering I caused. But I can promise you, and all of you, he addressed the pack again, that I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of the second chance I don't deserve. I will be better. I will lead better. And I will never, never let pride and fear turn me into that kind of monster again. Silence. Then, slowly, a few wolves began to bow their heads, acknowledging, accepting. Not all of them. Some still looked angry, doubtful, betrayed. But it was a start. Rothic stepped forward, his ancient face troubled. The challenge stands incomplete. Draven Thorn issued terms and left before resolution. By law, that means... By law, Vyra interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness of her own voice. That means Draven is still Alpha Supreme until another formal challenge is issued. Draven gave him a chance to prove himself, so let him. Let him show you all he can be better than he was. And who are you to speak on pack law? Someone shouted from the crowd. You're just a rejected... She's my Luna, Draven said, his voice taking on the alpha command that made every wolf within earshot straighten involuntarily. My mate, my equal. And she speaks with my authority. Anyone who wants to challenge that can step forward right now. I'm injured, bleeding, and exhausted. Should be easy pickings. Who wants to try? No one moved. That's what I thought, Draven said. Now someone get a healer before I pass out, and someone else start preparing for whatever the hell comes next, because Draven was right. We need to be better, all of us. And that starts today. He swayed slightly, and Vyra caught him, supporting his weight as healers rushed forward. The bond pulsed between them, warm and steady and absolutely certain. They'd survived, both of them, against all odds. But as Vyra helped Draven toward the pack house, she caught movement in the shadows at the edge of the forest. A figure watching, too far to identify, but close enough to send ice through her veins. The figure raised one hand in a mocking salute, then disappeared. Someone had been watching the whole thing. Someone who'd wanted this outcome. Someone who'd orchestrated events from the shadows, manipulating them all like pieces on a board. The elders completing the bond. Draven returning with perfect timing. The challenge that ended with Draven wounded but still in power, bound to a mate he'd publicly humiliated, vulnerable to anyone who wanted to exploit that weakness. It was too convenient, too perfect, too planned. Draven, Vyra said quietly as they reached the pack house doors. I think we've been played, all of us. This whole thing, the rejection, the exile, the bond repair, your brother showing up, I think someone's been pulling strings the entire time. Draven's eyes sharpened despite his pain. Who? I don't know. But whoever it is, she looked back at the forest where the figure had been. They're not done with us yet. This was just the opening move. Before Draven could respond, a messenger burst through the gates, running full speed, face pale with terror. Alpha Supreme, we have a problem. What now? Draven demanded. The western border. There's been an attack. An entire patrol, slaughtered. And they left a message carved into the trees. The messenger swallowed hard. It says the old bloodlines are rising. The Omegas will remember what they were, and when they do, every Alpha will fall. It's signed... He hesitated. Signed by who? Vyra asked, dread pooling in her stomach. The Ash Queen. Vyra's blood turned to ice. That's impossible, she whispered. I didn't. But even as she said it, she remembered. The exiles at the frozen waterfall, Kira and her pack of rejected Omegas, the way they'd looked at her when the silver light manifested. The way Kira had talked about ancient power, about vessels, about the first Omegas who were anything but weak. Someone was using her name, her legend, building an army of Omegas who'd been rejected, abused, broken by the system, and they were coming for revenge. Not just against Kale-Draven, against every alpha in the realm. How many? Kale-Draven asked, his voice deadly calm. We don't know. Hundreds, maybe. All of them Omega. All of them trained. All of them claiming the Ash Queen as their leader and savior. But I'm right here, Vyra said desperately. I'm not leading anything. I didn't. Doesn't matter, Sable said grimly, joining them on the steps. Someone's using your image, your story. The rejected Omega who came back stronger, they're making you a symbol whether you want it or not. And symbols, she looked at Kale-Draven. Symbols start wars. The implications crashed down on them like an avalanche. Vyra had become something she'd never intended, a rallying cry for every Omega who'd been broken by the system, a promise of power and revenge, a threat to the established order, and now armies were rising in her name, whether she led them or not. We need to find them, Kale-Draven said. Find whoever's leading this. Stop them before what? Vyra asked. Before they kill alphas who deserve it? Before they burn down a system built on abuse and hierarchy and pain? Maybe they're right. Maybe the alphas should fall. Kale-Draven stared at her. You don't mean that. Don't I? Vyra shot back. How many Omegas are out there right now, being rejected, humiliated, exiled just like I was? How many are dying in the wastes because their mates were too proud or too afraid to accept them? Maybe this war is exactly what needs to happen. War means death, Kale-Draven said flatly. On both sides, Omega and Alpha, innocent and guilty alike. Is that really what you want? Vyra opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. Because she didn't know. She genuinely didn't know anymore. The bond pulsed between them, carrying her uncertainty, her rage, her desperate need for justice mixed with her horror at what that justice might cost. We need to move fast, Sable said. If there's an Omega army out there using Vyra's name, we need to either join them, stop them, or get out of their way. Standing in the middle just gets us killed. I need to talk to Kira, Vyra said suddenly. The Exile Pack. They might know something, might have heard rumors. Then we go together, Kale-Draven said. You can barely walk. Don't care. Where you go, I go. That bond works both ways now. Despite everything, Vyra found herself almost smiling. Stubborn Alpha. Stubborn Luna. They looked at each other, the bond humming between them, carrying a question that neither could answer yet. What were they going to do when the real war started? And whose side would they be on when the world they knew came crashing down? Because one thing was absolutely certain now. The Ash Queen was rising. And whether Vyra led the revolution or tried to stop it, blood was going to... The frozen waterfall looked different when Vyra returned to it 3 days later. The ice curtain had been shattered, broken from the inside by forces that didn't bother with subtlety. The cave entrance gaped open like a wound, and the scent of blood hung thick in the air. Old blood, days old, mixed with smoke and something acrid that made her eyes water. They're gone, Sable said from behind her, surveying the carnage with professional detachment. Whoever did this was thorough. No bodies, no survivors, no evidence except the destruction itself. Vyra stepped through the broken ice, her heart hammering. The interior of the cave system had been ransacked, furs torn and scattered, cooking pots overturned, weapons missing from their racks. But no blood inside, which meant whatever happened had happened fast, and the women who lived here had either fled or been taken. Kira wouldn't run, Vyra said quietly. She'd fight, die before abandoning her pack. Then where are the bodies? Kale-Draven moved through the space with careful steps, his injuries from the challenge still healing but no longer debilitating. The bond pulsed between them as he worked, carrying his focus, his concern, his growing certainty that something was very wrong here. Vyra knelt beside the cold fire pit, running her fingers through the ashes. Still warm. Not much, but enough to tell her this had happened recently. Maybe yesterday. Maybe the day before. She found something in the ash. A piece of paper partially burned with writing on it in a hand she didn't recognize. The old bloodlines are waking. The weak will become strong. The rejected will become queens. Join us at the broken spine when the moon turns dark, or be left behind when the world changes. Signed, those who remember what we were. Broken spine, Sable said, reading over Vyra's shoulder. That's a mountain range 2 days north of here. Old territory. Abandoned after the rogue wars 20 years ago. Nothing there but ruins and bad memories. It's where they're gathering, Vyra said, certainty settling in her gut like a stone. The Omega Army. They're using my name to recruit, and they took Kira's pack to either convert them or eliminate witnesses. We need to move, Kale Draven said, now, before this escalates into something we can't contain. It already has, a voice said from the cave entrance. They spun around, weapons drawn. A woman stood silhouetted against the gray daylight, tall and lean, with silver hair pulled back in elaborate braids. She wore armor, real armor, not the ceremonial kind alphas favored, but battle-worn leather and steel that had seen actual combat. Her eyes were the pale blue of winter ice, and when she stepped into the cave, Vyra felt power radiating from her like heat from a forge. "Who are you?" Kale Draven demanded, his body positioned protectively between the stranger and Vyra. "My name is Seren," the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of authority that came from years of command. "I lead the Omega Coalition, and I'm here to offer Vyra Duskhalo a choice." "I'm not interested in—" "You don't even know what I'm offering yet," Seren interrupted smoothly. "Hear me out, then decide." Vyra exchanged glances with Kale Draven. The bond pulsed with his wariness, his instinct to protect, but also his willingness to let her make this call. "Talk," Vyra said. "Fast." Seren smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. 3 weeks ago, a story started spreading through the Omega networks. A rejected mate who survived exile, who manifested power the likes of which hadn't been seen in generations, who stood up to the Alpha Supreme himself and made him kneel. They're calling you the Ash Queen, the first of the new bloodline, the one who'll lead us out of subjugation. I never asked for that. No one asked for revolution. It happens when the alternative becomes unbearable. Seren stepped further into the cave, her movements fluid and confident. "Do you know how many Omegas are rejected every year? Exiled? Killed for being inconvenient to their alpha mates? Hundreds. Thousands across all the territories. We've been bred to be weak, compliant, expendable. But you proved that's a lie. You proved we can be strong. And now every Omega who's ever been broken wants what you have. Power, freedom, the ability to fight back." "So you're building an army?" Kale Draven said flatly. "We're building a future," Seren corrected. "One where Omegas aren't property. Where the bond doesn't mean automatic submission. Where we have agency over our own lives. And yes, if that requires war to achieve, then war it is." "How many?" Vyra asked. "How many what?" "How many Omegas have you recruited?" Seren's smile widened. "At last count, 1,700, from every pack in the Northern Territories, all of them trained, all of them armed, all of them ready to die for the chance at something better. And that number grows daily because your story keeps spreading, keeps inspiring, keeps proving what's possible." Vyra's breath caught. 1,700. That was more than most packs' entire populations. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to lead them," Seren said simply. "Stand at the front. Be the symbol you've already become. Give them hope and direction and the certainty that this fight is worth fighting. With you leading, we can change everything. Without you," she shrugged, "we'll still fight. We'll still win, eventually. But it'll cost more lives, take more time, create more suffering. You can shorten that timeline, save lives on both sides." "By declaring war on every alpha in the realm," Kale Draven said. "By forcing them to acknowledge we're not property," Seren shot back. "Not the same thing. It is when you're threatening to kill anyone who doesn't comply. We're threatening to defend ourselves against a system built on our oppression. There's a difference." Vyra held up a hand, cutting off the argument before it could escalate. "You took Kira's pack. Where are they?" "There are—" "Safe," Seren said, "at the Broken Spine. Kira herself is there, helping to organize defenses and train new recruits. She asked us to find you, to bring you to see what we're building, to give you a chance to choose your side before the fighting starts." And if I refuse? Serene's expression hardened. Then you stay out of the way. We'll use your name and your story, whether you're with us or not. You've already become the symbol. The only question is whether you want to control what that symbol means or let us define it for you. The implication hung heavy in the air. They'd use her either way. Make her a martyr or a figurehead, present or absent, willing or not. I need time, Vyra said. You have until the dark moon, Serene replied. 3 days. After that, we move with or without you. The gathering is happening. The army is ready, and the alphas... Her eyes flicked to Kale Draven with something that might have been pity. The alphas will have to choose whether to adapt or die. No middle ground. Not anymore. She turned and walked out of the cave, disappearing into the forest as silently as she'd arrived. Silence fell over the three of them. Well, Sable said finally, that's a problem. That's an understatement, Kale Draven muttered. He turned to Vyra, and the bond pulsed with his conflict, his fear, his desperate need to protect her from a choice that had no good options. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Vyra said slowly, that everything she said about the system is true. Omegas are treated as less, as property, as expendable. I lived it. I almost died because of it, and I know for a fact I'm not the only one. But, Kale Draven prompted, but war means death. Innocents caught in crossfire, children orphaned, entire packs destroyed. And for what? To prove a point? To force change through violence when there might be other ways? What other ways? Sable asked. You think the alphas will just give up power because you ask nicely? They won't. They never have. Change only happens when the oppressed make it too expensive to maintain the status quo. She's not wrong, Kale Draven said quietly, and both women turned to stare at him. What? I'm not blind. The system is broken. Has been for generations. I just never had to face it until... He looked at Vyra. Until I became part of the problem. Until I rejected you and saw firsthand what that does to someone. So what are you saying? Vyra asked. I'm saying maybe this war needs to happen. Not because I want it, but because the alternative is more of the same. More Omegas rejected, exiled, killed. More suffering hidden behind tradition and hierarchy. Maybe burning it all down and starting over is the only way forward. You'd fight against your own kind? Sable demanded. Against other alphas? I'd fight for what's right, Kale Draven said firmly. And if that means standing with the Omegas, then that's where I stand. I made a promise to be better, to lead better. This is what better looks like. The bond surged with his conviction, his absolute certainty, and Vyra felt tears prick her eyes. They'll kill you, she whispered. The other alphas. Your own pack. The second you side with us, you become a traitor to everything they believe in. Then I'm a traitor, Kale Draven said simply. I can live with that. I can't live with more of what I did to you happening to others. Vyra reached out and took his hand, squeezing hard. You're insane. I learned from the best. They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, the bond humming between them with something that felt almost like hope. So we go to the broken spine, Sable said. See what we're actually dealing with. Make an informed decision instead of stumbling around blind. Agreed? Agreed, Vyra and Kale Draven said simultaneously. The journey north took 2 days of hard travel through terrain that grew progressively more hostile. The Broken Spine mountain range lived up to its name, jagged peaks that looked like vertebrae thrust up through the earth, surrounded by forests so dense the sun barely penetrated. Old battlefields dotted the landscape, marked by rusted weapons and bones half buried in soil. They saw evidence of Omega presence long before they reached the gathering point. Carved symbols on trees, camps recently abandoned but clearly organized, patrols moving through the forest with military precision. They're not playing around, Sable muttered. This is a real army, trained, disciplined, dangerous. The Broken Spine itself was a fortress built into the mountain, using natural caves expanded and reinforced with stone and timber, defensive positions at every approach, sentries posted at intervals, weapons caches visible through open cave mouths, and everywhere, Omega wolves, hundreds of them, maybe more. They moved with purpose, with confidence, with the bearing of soldiers who knew their cause was just. Saren met them at the main entrance, flanked by 2 guards who looked like they could snap Kale Draven in half despite his alpha status. "You came," she said, something like approval in her voice. "Good. Kira's been asking for you." She led them deep into the mountain, through tunnels lit by torches and bioluminescent moss, past chambers filled with weapons and supplies, and Omega's training in hand-to-hand combat. The scale of the operation was staggering. Kira waited in what looked like a command center, surrounded by maps and reports, and a dozen other women who were clearly her lieutenants. She looked up when Vyra entered, and her weathered face split into a genuine smile. "There she is," Kira said warmly. "The girl who fell from the sky with silver wings. I was hoping you'd find your way here." "You're part of this?" Vyra asked. "You're helping them?" "Helping us," Kira corrected gently. "This isn't their revolution, child. It's ours. All of us who've been broken by the system. I've been planning this for 15 years since my own mate rejected me and left me to die. I just needed a spark to light the fire. You provided that spark." "I didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter what you meant," Kira interrupted. "What matters is what you did. You survived. You grew strong. You stood up to the Alpha who destroyed you and made him see you as an equal. That's a story worth telling, worth fighting for." Vyra looked around the command center at the faces watching her with varying degrees of hope, determination, and desperation. "How many of you were rejected?" she asked quietly. Every hand in the room went up. Every single one. "How many of you have lost someone to the system?" The hands stayed up, and several more rose. "How many of you would rather die fighting than go back to what it was before?" Not a single hand lowered. Vyra felt something break inside her chest. Not the bond. Something else. Some last resistance, some final wall between her and the terrible certainty of what needed to happen. "When?" she asked, turning to Seren. "When what?" "When does the war start?" Seren's eyes gleamed. "Tomorrow at dawn. We march on the nearest pack territories. Demand surrender and reform. If they refuse..." She shrugged. "We take them by force, liberate their Omegas, dismantle their hierarchy, move to the next pack and repeat until every Alpha either bends or breaks." "That's genocide," Kale Draven said quietly. "That's revolution," Seren corrected. "And it's long overdue." "There's another way," Vyra said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. "There has to be. We can't just slaughter our way to a better world. That's not change. That's just revenge with better PR." "What are you proposing?" Kira asked. Vyra took a deep breath, an idea forming that was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. "A challenge," she said, "under the old laws. I challenge the Alpha Council itself. All of them. In front of witnesses from every pack. If I win, they reform the system. No more forced bonds. No more exile for rejected mates. Omegas get autonomy, rights, protection under law. If I lose..." She swallowed hard. "If I lose, this army stands down. Peacefully. No war. No bloodshed." "You can't be serious," Sable said. "The Alpha Council will never accept those terms." "They will if the alternative is war with 1,700 trained Omegas," Vyra countered. "They'll see it as an easy win, one fight to avoid thousands of deaths. They'll take that deal." "And when they kill you?" Kira asked gently. "Because they will try, child. You're strong, but you're one Omega against the most powerful Alphas in the realm." "Then I die," Vyra said simply. "But at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have given them a chance to do the right thing without blood." "I don't like this," Kale Draven said, the bond pulsing with his fear, his desperate need to protect her. "You don't have to like it," Vyra replied. "You just have to trust me." Their eyes met across the chamber, and something passed between them. Understanding, acceptance, the kind of communication that didn't need words. "I'll send the challenge," Seren said slowly, "but Vyra, if you lose it, if they kill you, this army doesn't stand down. We use your death as a rallying cry, and we burn every Alpha territory to the ground. Understood?" "Understood," Vyra said. The challenge went out that night, carried by messengers to every pack in the northern territories. By dawn, responses had started coming back. The Alpha Council agreed to meet. In 3 days. At the gathering grounds, neutral territory where no pack held sway. Witnesses from all packs invited. One Omega against the Council. Winner takes all. The gathering grounds were ancient, marked by standing stones older than any pack's collective memory. Wolves had been meeting here for thousands of years to settle disputes, form alliances, and witness challenges that would shape the future. Today, that future hung in the balance. Vyra stood at the center of the circle, barefoot in the snow, wearing simple clothes that wouldn't restrict movement. The silver light pulsed beneath her skin, visible through the fabric, marking her as something other, something new. Across from her stood 5 alphas representing the council, the most powerful leaders from the major territories, each a legend in their own right. Warriors, strategists, killers who'd held their positions through strength and cunning. Behind them, arranged in massive semicircles, sat representatives from every pack. Thousands of wolves, all watching, all waiting to see if the Omega who called herself the Ash Queen could back up her legend with action. Behind Vyra stood Kyle Draven, Sable, and a small delegation from her Omega army. Kira, Seren, a dozen others who'd earned the right to witness this moment. Elder Rothic stepped into the center, his ancient face grave. "The challenge is witnessed," he intoned. Vyra Dusk Hollow, Omega of no pack, challenges the Alpha Council for the right to reform pack law. The terms are set. If she wins, the Council agrees to implement the reforms she's outlined. If she loses, her followers stand down and accept the current system. Do all parties consent? "Yes," Vyra said. "We consent," the lead Council Alpha said. His name was Marcus, and he looked at Vyra like she was an insect he was about to crush. "Let's get this over with. I have actual important matters to attend to." Rothic nodded and stepped back. Silence fell. Vyra and the 5 alphas began to circle each other, predators assessing prey, looking for weakness, for opening, for the perfect moment to strike. Then Marcus lunged. He was fast, faster than Kale Draven had been, faster than any wolf Vyra had faced. His shifted form was enormous, easily 400 pounds of muscle and fury and absolute confidence. Vyra dodged left, calling on the silver light. It responded immediately, flooding her system with power, with speed, with strength that shouldn't exist in an Omega frame. She didn't shift to wolf. She didn't need to. Silver wings erupted from her back, and she launched herself into the air, avoiding Marcus's snapping jaws by inches. The crowd gasped, shocked murmurs spreading like wildfire. "What is she?" someone shouted. "The old bloodlines." "It's true, what they said." The other 4 Council Alphas shifted and attacked as one, coordinated, trying to bring her down through sheer numbers and overwhelming force. Vyra dove, spun, her wings carrying her through impossible aerial maneuvers. The silver light formed weapons in her hands, blades of pure condensed energy that cut through fur and flesh when they connected. She fought like nothing they'd ever seen, fast, brutal, efficient. But she was still 1 against 5. Marcus caught her leg with his jaws, dragging her from the air. She hit the ground hard, and pain exploded through the bond into Kale Draven. He started forward, but Sable grabbed his arm. "She has to do this alone," Sable hissed. "Interference voids the challenge." Vyra rolled, kicked Marcus in the throat hard enough to make him release her. Came up bleeding, but moving. The other alphas closed in, forming a circle, cutting off escape. "Yield," Marcus growled, his voice distorted through his wolf throat. "You've proven your point. You're strong, stronger than we expected. But you can't win this. Yield, and we'll consider some of your reforms." "All of them," Vyra gasped. "Or none. That was the deal." "Then you die." They attacked together, and Vyra let the silver light take over completely. It exploded outward from her core, not in a wave this time, but in a sustained eruption of pure power that lit up the entire gathering grounds like a second sun had appeared on Earth. The alphas were thrown back, some of them actually catching fire from the intensity of it. When the light faded, Vyra stood at the center, transformed. She'd shifted, but not to wolf, to something else, something between. Her form was humanoid but larger, covered in silver scales that looked like liquid metal. Her wings stretched 20 feet across, each feather a blade of light. Her eyes blazed with power that made even the alphas turn away, unable to hold her gaze. "This is what we were," she said, and her voice carried across the entire gathering, resonating with harmonics that made the standing stones hum. "Before we were bred to be weak, before we were taught to submit, this is the original Omega, the balance to alpha dominance, The vessel of power meant to ensure no alpha could rule without wisdom. You thought we were weak because that's what suited you, but we were never weak. We were sealed, sleeping, waiting to remember. She looked at Marcus, at the other council members, picking themselves up from where they'd been thrown. I can kill you all right now, she said quietly. All 5 of you. And everyone here knows it. But I'm not here to kill. I'm here to change things. So I'm asking one more time. Will you reform the system peacefully, or do we do this the hard way? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he shifted back to human form and knelt. We reform, he said, his voice carrying clearly. All of it. Autonomy for Omegas. No forced bonds. No exile for rejection. Equal protection under law. You have our word. One by one, the other council members knelt as well. The crowd erupted in noise, shock, celebration, rage, confusion, all blending together into a sound like thunder. Vyra released the transformation, the silver form fading until she stood human again, exhausted, bleeding, barely able to remain upright. Kaledraven was there immediately, catching her as her legs gave out. You did it, he whispered against her hair. You actually did it. We did it, Vyra corrected, leaning into him, the bond singing with relief and joy and exhaustion so profound she could barely think. All of us. Together. The reforms were implemented within a month. It wasn't perfect. There was resistance. Some alphas refused to comply and had to be forcibly removed from power. Some packs splintered. Some territories burned. But change came. Real, lasting change. Omegas gained autonomy. The right to refuse bonds, the right to leave abusive situations, the right to fight, to lead, to exist as equals rather than property. And at the center of it all, standing as the symbol of what was possible, stood Vyra Duskalo, the Ash Queen. Not because she'd burned the world down, but because she'd risen from her own ashes and proven that strength came in forms the old system had never imagined. 6 months after the challenge, Vyra stood on the balcony of the pack house, watching the sun set over territory that looked different now. Quieter, more peaceful, still healing from centuries of wounds, but healing nonetheless. Kaledraven joined her, sliding his arms around her waist from behind, the bond humming contentedly between them. Seren sent word, he said quietly. The last of the resistant packs has agreed to reform. It's done. The system is changed. For now, Vyra said, until someone decides the old ways were better and tries to reverse it. Then we'll stop them, Kaledraven said simply. You and me. Together. Together, Vyra echoed, turning in his arms to face him. Who would have thought? The Alpha who rejected me and the Omega he destroyed, now standing side by side trying to fix the world. I don't think I destroyed you, Kaledraven said softly. I think I broke you open. Let something out that was always there, just waiting. Is that supposed to make what you did okay? No, nothing makes it okay, but maybe... He hesitated. Maybe it means something good came from something terrible. Maybe that's the best we can hope for. Vyra looked at him for a long moment, this man who'd been her destroyer and her savior, her enemy and her mate, her greatest pain and her strongest ally. I forgive you, she said finally, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. And I can't have that while I'm holding on to rage. Kaledraven's eyes closed and she felt the bond pulse with his relief, his gratitude, his love. I don't deserve you, he whispered. No, Vyra agreed. You don't, but you're stuck with me anyway. That's what the bond means, for better or worse. Mostly better, I hope. We'll see. She smiled and it was real, genuine, the first truly happy expression she'd worn in longer than she could remember. Ask me again in 50 years? Deal. They stood there as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold and ash, two souls bound together by fate and choice, by pain and healing, by everything they'd survived and everything they'd yet to face. The Ash Queen and her reluctant Alpha. The Omega who remembered what she was, and the man who learned to see her clearly. Together, they'd change the world. And together, they'd face whatever came next. Because that's what mates did. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. every single day. And in the end, choice was the only thing that mattered, the only thing that made any of it real.